Get on your feet. Now time is over with the quickness. Can I get a witness like Jehovah? Amen. Keep it up till I say when. Now I'm busting up the playpen. It's the era of Jake Rivera. Sparking revolutions like in Guantanamo. Like Pharaoh getting plagued from the hands of the creator. Locust devouring all the hocus pocus. Focus on the balls, got the curious unload. Hunters under pressure, about to explode like the flamingo. Mean and green, so check my signal. It's the skinny individual, I kid you not. I think you stop if you got to scheme, cause my team bring the steam like I wonder from an oasis. And the race is right, now it's time to take my place in the sun. You can't deny the force. 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 You can't deny the force.
This is futile. The governmental approval. If it's the defense, because the views get futile. It's brutal. So expensive, penny speed, and every ball and symbols all suspended sense.
Self-suppression of evidence will be that with belligerence.
And you can hesitate minutes, cause like the president 10 hence. Your confession is expected if you think they were persistent in the method, yes, you guess it.
Blessed are we who come in the name of J.
Our word spreads like a
Oh, I declare.
It's a state of emergency, the president is in. So don't expect the reality, depend on me, my enemy. It's a done for giving it. You can't resist the skin. So give yourself a feeling, it's still feel the war, emotional, you see.
Cross, cautiously. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force.
It's like we're back in the studio. Los Angeles, 1997.
Good to know.
Greg Gurwitz behind the controls. And this is Brad. I don't need to tell the truth, but I never lie. I don't need to bow to you. You're just passing by. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I'll come back to you. Get inside my troubled mind with all of your threats. Sometimes I think I was blind. Not before we met. I never wanted to be the one that you depend on for your life. When you cry, it smells like soup. Sound like Shona knife. Never feel though I said all night. I gotta ride. Each time I said all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all night. You're an evil little girl. I'm a twisted man, tearing through your perfect world. Make you understand. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I'll come back to you and do the things you do. Stay all night. I gotta ride. Each time I stay all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all. I would never treat you bad. You deserve the best from me. If you want to keep your place, you better get down on yours. Yeah, Todd wrote this one.
Yeah. You think?
This is not mine. got it right. Each time I said all night, now I just might. You make me say it all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me say it all night. I'm gonna stay it all night. R.I.P. Todd.
Round robin. Your questions, comments, wagers. Give us a reason. Sleeper fantasy play. Your best alternative line. Whatever you have. Text the round robin 757-354-5517.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose cross nights and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, take us past our spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network.
You are tuned in to the Round Robin with Stephen Murray on Deep End Broadcasting.
Down up in these streets, nobody left to spend. Still thinking about the night before my brain is on the bed. Way up ahead, I see the crowd and flashing red lights. I'm gonna see the college of
Happy Saturday, wherever you are here in this world. This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network, just after 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here in the lovely Chits Beach Studios, Virginia Beach, Virginia, the United States of America. We are live, and we're here to break down the entire wild card slate and more. Usually on Sundays with the full NFL slate, but we get an early start with the two games going on this Saturday. And right off the bat, we're going to go right to Kansas City here in a couple of minutes. We're going to get my man Nick Athen here. We're going to talk about the game tonight with the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Do the Dolphins have a path to victory here? I think that they actually do. It's interesting stuff going out in Kansas City as well. We need to kind of get the feel of the retirement of Andy Reid. Potentially after the season, maybe even midday today. Who knows? Craziness out there in Kansas City. We need to dissect all of that. I heard some rumors yesterday. So Nick Athen, my old boss from Warpaint Illustrated, will come on here to answer those here in a few minutes. Of course, the other game, Houston and Cleveland as well. And then the games tomorrow, 3 good ones. And then we have the game on Monday as well. So we'll get through all of that this morning. Let's see if we have any line movement right off the bat. The weather is the big subplot of the weekend, and a weekend of many subplots, for the least of which is the one with old man Flacco here against the young buck C.J. Stroud, -2.5 for the Browns, 44.5. So the Browns are the favorite on the road at the division-winning Texans. Cleveland beating Houston just a few weeks back, minus C.J. Stroud in the lineup. Tonight, the evening game, cold, freezing temperatures and below, -4.5, 43.5 with the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Steelers +9.5 at Buffalo's tomorrow. Another cold weather game over under 33.5 there with the Bills and the Steelers. And then good games to round out the evening. What a great Sunday this is shaping up to be for sure. Cowboys and Packers, a very fun game. Cowboys laying 7, 50.5, all kinds of angles to go on with that. And, of course, we have the Rams and Lions night game. Lions minus 3, 51.5. And then the Monday night game with the Eagles and the Buccaneers, the Eagles minus 3 and 43.5. So subplot a mini, and as much as any game will have their little plots going on, the one here in Kansas City with the Chiefs and the Dolphins, maybe second to none on the weekend for sure. So on with us now, and he's been on with us before, is my former boss, the man himself. Let me pull up the your little slide here, Mr. Nick Athen. Are you in Joplin or are you in Kansas City today?
I'm actually heading to Kansas City later this morning. Yes. So
you're going to be going to the game.
I know it is my mom's 91st birthday, and that takes precedent.
Oh, happy birthday! Happy birthday to your mom. You're Nick with PrimetimeSportsTalk.com, also ChiefsBlitz.com as well. How's everything going with those two right now?
Sites are doing well. We started Chiefs Blitz a few months ago. It's taken off. Got a great podcast. Please subscribe to it on YouTube. 4 Guys in the Bar, Chiefs Blitz podcast is what we call it. We have a lot of fun. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Always got good content up on the website, and then Primetime Sports Talk, more of a national perspective, more of a fantasy and gambling perspective on those sites.
All right, Nick, a lot to get to really with this game. I won't try to drill you to death on things. Okay, so I was getting in the car last night, and I was catching into the program, and it was Mad Dog's show, but he was talking about Andy Reid potentially retiring even before the game today. Now, everywhere I tried to look for something, I didn't see anything about that, so I'm assuming I'm getting bad intel completely at all. But that's not the case, right? Everything's
no, Mad Dog. I love Mad Dog, but he's wrong. I mean, listen, I'll say this about Andy. I would not rule out that if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl that he contemplates retirement.
Right. Okay.
Let me make this perfectly clear for the Chiefs Kingdom and the Chiefs fan base. The decision to stop coaching is going to be Tammy Reid. That is his wife. If she says, honey, it's time to hang up and play with the grandkids, then that's exactly what's going to happen. Regardless of how long Patrick Mahomes plays, Andy would like to coach till he's 70, and this has been the craziest week. I mean, Saban, Carroll, Belichick, all our coaching.
Yeah, unprecedented. We've never seen anything like that in our career, to be honest.
If Reid slid in as the 4th member, it wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't surprise me. And I think, where Mad Dog is coming from is this. If Andy wins a Super Bowl and Jim Harbaugh is still out there and Pete Carroll's still out there and Bill Belichick is still out there, who's going to want to coach the Chiefs? It's the number 1 job in the NFL.
Right.
It's not even close. You got Patrick Mahomes. You've got a great defense. You got young defensive players. You've got a young offensive line. You've got a young running back. You've got the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Maybe not statistically this year, but I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. And so I think if you don't see these veteran coaches start being picked off, now I know Harbaugh's going to meet with the Chargers. He's also going to meet with the Raiders. I still think he goes back to Michigan. I'm not sure he's going to really, really leave, though I know he wants to. But he has strong ties to Kansas City. His wife's entire family lives in Kansas City. So, your question, I don't think Andy Reid's going to retire. I think if he wins the Super Bowl, he'll think about it. I mean, that's 3 Super Bowl rings in 6 years. That's pretty good. That he's already a Hall of Famer. Is he going to catch Belichick? Is he going to catch Shula? What's it going to take to get there? That's the bigger question. So for me, it's going to end someday. There's no question about it. But if you want an heir apparent, I would be hard-pressed to not think that Jim Harbaugh would be the perfect candidate for the Kansas City Chiefs to lead them to the next level.
Wow, interesting.
Okay.
That's just me. I mean, I'm a huge Harbaugh guy. I mean, I know people who are really tight with his family and who told me some things, and he loves Kansas City. Not saying it's going to happen. I think it's probably going to end up being the Chargers or Michigan. Though I don't know how the Spanos family is going to spend $20 million asking price per year. They've never done anything in their organization to indicate that they're willing to spend any money for a top flight coach. And I don't know. I think there's more smoke there than fire.
Interesting. So the whole Harbaugh thing, just thinking about it, you figure he slides right in because regionally it makes sense. He kind of gets welcomed with open arms. Not going to have much resistance in any kind of media or anything like that. It would be a good market for him. So that's interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but
right,
that would be
right.
my choice.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking to myself, the fantasy land of where some of these coaches could land on what teams. And even with some of these teams that could get bounced out of the playoffs early, we still could see some job openings. Let's get to the game tonight. Because I think
definitely see some job openings on Tuesday morning. I guarantee it.
Right. We're going to, yeah, especially if we get some upsets here in the NFC for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's see here. Game plan tonight to me for these two teams, Miami and Kansas City, I think is going to be very run dependent, more so on the Dolphins side. But I think Pacheco becomes huge in the sense of just how hard that this guy runs with the football. Now, I think in this kind of weather, and you're going to have to kind of really tell me how it feels outside there because you're there now. But I know what 15, 17 degrees feels like. I want to run inside at first chance that I get, to be honest. And I can, work out in freezing temperatures and such like that. But tell me where I'm wrong. Is this a running attack on both sides? And Pacheco, is he a big part of the game plan here? The guy just runs hard, Nick.
Yeah, Pacheco's the key. I mean, he's the one guy they can't lose because they don't really have anything behind him at all. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, excuse me, has done a nice job in working, as a backup and getting 4 or 5 carries, maybe 6 carries. He's pretty good in the screen game, but it's Pacheco. If Pacheco's running for $150, and he's got a couple of catches in there, and he's got some big runs. He runs violent. Now, you're talking about hitting brick on brick. Though the surface in Kansas City is heated, it's not going to be god awful. Not like the frozen tundra, kind of experience, but it's still going to be a hard ground. And he's a punisher, and he's healthy. He took the week off last week, which I think he needed. He had minor shoulder surgery about 3 weeks ago. Just nothing. It was just a very simple thing, just to clear some stuff up, and he was able to play the next week. So I think you're right. I think the Chiefs have to use the exact same formula they did to beat the Bengals, and the Bengals have a far better defense than the Miami Dolphins, especially at this stage with all of their injuries. So run the ball, take a couple of deep shots, use the middle of the field, let your defense, make plays, and let Harrison Buckner kick a bunch of field goals. That's the winning formula. You're not going to see that flashy offense. You're not going to see that 50, 60-yard bombs. They just don't have the personnel to run that kind of offense. So to me, for Kansas City to win, Isaiah Pacheco is going to be the key.
You know that stadium well. You talked about the field goals being necessary. How about the weather with the wind? How's it when it's a windy day there in Arrowhead? What's it like for a kicker? Is it maybe kind of overrated the fact that the special teams may be given a hard time this evening, or is that something that we can't understate enough here? So what do you got in terms of that?
Kickoff's going to be 4 degrees,
right?
So you're going to be hitting a heavy football. The winds are going to be about 12 miles an hour. The winds are about 12 miles an hour. What's unique about Arrowhead is that you could be kicking toward one goalpost, and the wind could be going one direction and kick the other goalpost, and the wind going a different direction. Thankfully, Harrison Buckner is one of the best, if not the best, kicker in the National Football League. And, he understands that stadium. He's kicked in everything from hot weather to cold weather to to conditions that are going to be a lot windier than they are going to be tonight. But, at kickoff, it's 4 degrees, and by 10 o'clock, it's going to be -4 or -5 degrees. So, if you needed to make a 35, 40-yarder, I would say no problem. But if you're asking them in those conditions to tie the score, to try to win it with a 40, 45-yard field goal, might be a little bit more difficult. But the winds will play a factor in the quarterback's throwing and the punters and the kickers kicking the ball.
The Dolphins have to be able to run this ball, right? And they have that multiple running backs really down the roster. They got plenty of those. So you have to expect that just from being terrified of Chris Jones alone, that you're not going to have Tua sitting back there in a pocket trying to find Tyreek on a deep post across the middle. They're going to have to run the ball, right? Is that what you're expecting on the Chiefs side defensively? Yeah,
they have to. If they don't run the ball, they can't win. Listen, I'm not a Tua guy. Never have been, never will be. I don't think he has the arm strength. He's got the benefit of Tyreek Hill, who, throw the ball within 10 yards of Tyreek Hill up in the air, and he's probably going to run under it. And that's what he's done a lot this year. That's a lot of their offense. And, he may break out for a couple of big plays tonight. It's entirely possible. Speed still kills. But, he's got a calf injury. He's got an ankle injury. Jalen Waddle is going to try to play. He's not 100%. Even Raheem Mostert's not 100%. And, to not be 100% in temperatures like this is going to be very, very difficult. But, again, they've got two, with Achani or Akani, I can't pronounce his name properly. I apologize. Those two backs are better than Isaiah Pacheco if you put those two together. The Chiefs that's the best tandem on the field tonight. So that's dangerous for Kansas City. They haven't been able at times to stop the run. But, this defense has been so good since the Detroit game. They've been consistent. They haven't changed. I think they're number 2 in scoring, just a shy behind the Baltimore Ravens. And I just think for Kansas City, that defense, Chris Jones, could be one of his last games in Kansas City. He's probably going to be a free agent next year. I'm not sure the Chiefs are going to sign him. So that's another thing to look at. How does he want to end his career in Kansas City? And I think for Kansas City, this is a game they should win. They have, I think, better talent on defense. I think they have better special teams. The wide receiver talent is different, obviously, but at the quarterback position, everybody keeps crapping on Patrick Mahomes, and I just don't get it. And, I think people might find out tonight how good he really is.
All right. Do you expect this game to be – now, I see a scenario for sure where Miami folds the tents. The Chiefs come out and kind of look dominant like they have been in the past. In past years. You can't say that about this season because I don't think we've seen at any point, right, where that offenses can be turned dominant, except for that Bears game. The Bears game, they looked really good, right? That's probably the last real time. So that being said, and we're going to get a big dose of Pacheco too, this game probably stays lower than what they have for a posted total in your mind tonight, lower scoring game.
Yeah, it's going to be, maybe Chiefs will probably score mid-20s and the Dolphins probably mid-teens. I can't see a whole lot for it unless there's, a pick six or there's a fumble or, a corner falls down or a receiver falls down or, something like that. I mean, the problem is going to be Miami in particular. They have to manage a lot of different things where the Chiefs don't really have to manage as many things because they're used to cold. I mean, Andy had them out on Wednesday and Thursday outside practicing, and it was cold. And, he gets them ready. And the Dolphins can't, they left at 85 degrees.
Yeah, they can't simulate
yesterday.
That. Yeah.
You can't simulate that. And again, I don't think people understand how cold it is, how difficult it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on the field when it's in a really, really cold game. And, I've been in the stands when it's really, really cold. And, you can talk about the heaters and the jackets that come up to their ankles, all those things. But this is going to be a game where it's just going to be a very methodical, business-like game for Kansas City, and that's to win it. And hope on Sunday that the Steelers upset the Bills, which I believe they will.
Interesting call. There you
go. Yeah, I got a couple of upsets this weekend. So, but listen, the Chiefs are still the team to beat. They're the defending Super Bowl champion. Yeah, they haven't looked great this year offensively, but the defense has bailed them out. Rashee Rice has come out of nowhere to really set the tone. At least they've got a really good wide receiver to go along with Kelsey, to go along with Pacheco. If Justin Watson has any kind of decent game, that's definitely going to help. And who knows? And Valdez-Scantling, he's Mr. Postseason. They get to the Super Bowl last year primarily because he was the last receiver standing. But he's been awful this year, and probably his last year in Kansas City. So maybe he wants to make a statement. But for me, when I look at this game, I mean, everything says the Chiefs should win it. But we all know in the NFL the ball bounces crazy, and anything can happen. But this team is about as focused as I've seen them. They survive the regular season in a manner in which they're not accustomed to. And I think that's going to help them because the way they're talking right now, it's not a weather game. It's a playoff game. And this is why you come to the Chiefs. This is why you're a part of the Chiefs organization. When you've got number 15 and you've got Andy Reid, you're going to have a chance to win any game you play. And there are a lot of NFL teams that can say the same thing.
Do you guys may have the best defense in the postseason right now, do you think? If the offense can completely sputter out, can that defense carry you all the way?
Dolphins defense, because of the injuries, they're cooked. I mean, they got guys who just met each other this week. They're going to be starting. I think the I don't know if they're the best defense. Let me put it to you this way: the Ravens have the best front seven in football. Okay, it's not even close. Their linebackers are flying. Their secondary isn't. I don't think it's all that good. A good football team that can handle the front seven is going to put 30, 35 points up against that Ravens defense, potentially, in a decent weather environment. The Chiefs secondary, I think, is the best in the playoffs. I think their front seven is good. It's not as good as the Ravens. So I would say they're probably 1 and 2. I give the Ravens the edge. The Rams defense is really, really strong. The Browns defense scares me to death. That is not a team I want to face.
Not as good on the road, though. They just give up too many points. They give up almost 30 points on the road lately.
They do, but there's this Joe Flacco mystique thing going on right now.
Yeah,
there's
another subplot.
Nothing I want more than the Browns to win today and go to the Ravens, and Flacco gets to return to the place where he won a Super Bowl. Because I don't think the Ravens are going to make the championship game. I never have felt that way. I don't think Lamar Jackson is a postseason quarterback. Running quarterbacks who don't win in the NFL, and they just don't. And they don't win Super Bowls. I can't think of a time that it's actually happened. So, the Chiefs defense is going to carry them to the Super Bowl. If the defense plays lights out football and the Chiefs score 20 to 25 points, no one's going to beat them. But it's got to happen. And you can't rest your laurels on the regular season and say, hey, well, we did it, for 17 games, but we got to do it now. And Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, said the same thing, because it doesn't matter what we did. We got to continue to do it now. I mean, Chris Jones has to play. He can't take plays off. George Karlaftis has to be aggressive. Nick Bolton and Leo Chanel and Drew Tranquil, have to be great. L'Jarius Sneed is the best corner in the NFL. Justin Reed has had the best year of his career at safety. Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie. McDuffie, got voted the first team All-Pro. These guys have to play football tonight, and they have to play well. And if this defense plays well, I don't see a team that can beat them, including the Ravens, even if Kansas City has to go on the road, and I hope that happens. I want to see them go to Buffalo next week. So I think Pittsburgh, like I said, Pittsburgh's going to upset them because of their running game and the weather and the conditions. That's not a Josh Allen game. And, that would be fun. It would be fun to shake things up in the playoffs and see. But I'd like to see Kansas City at least go on the road one time and prove the doubters wrong that Mahomes can win on the road.
All right, you like Pittsburgh in an upset. You said you like a couple of other things as well. So what do you got?
I got the Browns. Browns are going to beat the Texans today. I think the Joe Flacco thing is real. I think Myles Garrett has been a beast this year, and I think he's going to carry that defense. Kevin Stefanski, he was my pick for the first coach fired. I thought for sure, that he would be gone, and he's done a terrific job. And now, he's done it without Deshaun Watson, and I think Watson's a bust. I don't think he's going to ever be a guy that's going to lead any team to a Super Bowl. So that's definitely going to be something to look forward to. But I got the Browns. I've got the Chiefs. I've got the Steelers over the Bills. As much as I love Jordan Love and the Packers are my number 2 team. I got the Cowboys. I'm going to give the Lions fans their due to get a home win, though I think the Rams have a better chance to beat the Lions. And the Bucs will put the Eagles out of the playoffs and Nick Sirianni out of a job.
Wow.
That's kind of my prediction. That's my prediction for the weekend.
I could see that.
Mike Vrabel will be the next head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Interesting. All right. Good. Good shots there, Nick. All right. So what's the plans for your mom's birthday with her today then?
We're just going to make dinner for her, watch the game, and just do things old school. This will be for being a nostalgia person. The last time my mom and I watched a playoff game was Joe Montana and Warren Moon in Houston against the Oilers in the divisional round. Living away from Kansas City and not coming home this time of year now that we live closer. So this will be the first playoff game we've watched since the Chiefs upset the Houston Oilers in the Joe Montana, Marcus Allen, Derek Thomas, and Smith era.
Down in the House of Pain, they called that.
Down in the House of Pain. I've got that video cassette somewhere. I don't know where it is, but that was one of the greatest games in Chiefs history, I think. And of course, a week later, they go to Buffalo, and it was a dud. So, we'll see how this one. We'll see how this one shapes out for the year.
All right, Nick. Appreciate you joining us. Let us know what's going on out there in Kansas City, Joplin, Missouri. Your mom's birthday and everything. Big game tonight. So let's see. Chiefs win mid-20s to the teens. So something like 23.
I got 26 to 13.
26-13. So you think they get all the way up to 39 points? And wind maybe not as bad there either. Maybe a little overrated in the kicking game as far as at least that goes with the with Buckner, your kicker.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Buckner. I mean, he'll adjust. He knows that stadium well and the cold conditions. That kick he made against the Bengals in the title game, that was like 45, 46, 47 yards out, and that was in some pretty cold temperatures too. So he'll be just fine.
All right, Nick. Safe travels as you go to your mom's birthday, and tell her happy birthday from us. Appreciate you coming.
You got it. Thanks, bud.
Yep.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right, my man Nick Athen, my old boss from the War Paint Illustrated days, and now in the studio is Nephew Dave as he pops in. David, how are you? Good morning. How's it going?
Doing well.
Me and Nephew will take you right up to 11 o'clock, and then we'll get Dave Del Grande on here live, and we'll go through the rest of the card with him and see what he likes as well. But we have business to take care of in the meantime ourselves. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and hit the football. We'll go ahead and take a break. We'll come back and do some NHL hockey. We'll mix things up a little bit as we have a full slate with that today and what the puck is going on once we get off here on this Saturday. And next Saturday, we'll do the round robin. But in 2 weeks, figure a dedicated what the puck is going on Saturday mornings, I think is what we came up with for that. Right, David? Is that the route we're going to go? And we'll do some more hockey next week because Saturdays have been a full slate. So that makes sense to do it then, and we can even talk about the Sunday games as well. So, David, wild card weekend, here we are. And we'll do our Super Bowl party on the road this year as well, Super Bowl morning. Last year, if you remember, we did the old CP Shuckers on wild card weekend. We're going to get a few things straight in the mobile studio before we take that out. And look for us at a venue
near the studios here on what we'll do is a pre-Super Bowl party, like brunch type dealio. And you can kick it off with us in the morning and then do whatever you have to do for the rest of the day. All right, David, 6 games on tap this weekend. And I don't know, what are your general thoughts about Wild Card Weekend, where we stand? It looks like to me we got a lot of subplots, a lot to think about. There's a lot of different storylines in a lot of these games. Very good, interesting matchups as well overall. So excited to see how it breaks down. What are your initial thoughts when you look at this whole slate as a whole?
It's pretty good football, I think, coming up, Steve. I think there's some room for some madness in here. Something's just kind of telling me that. Starting it off pretty good here with Cleveland and Houston. For some reason, Steve, I think that's going to end up being a good game. Cleveland probably comes out on top, but I don't think it's going to be by many. And this spread might even be appropriate, Steve.
Let me see if I can get up the bet handle, because that's going to help us on these exercises as we go through the.
You have me turned up?
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I got you.
Oh,
down.
there we
Sorry.
go.
There we go. All right. So yeah, good games, right, David, coming up.
Yeah, I think so, Steve. And again, I definitely like this first game here. We'll definitely be taking a look at that one.
Okay. Right now, let's see here. It looks like Cleveland is taking 65% of the bets. Houston is taking 35% of the bets overall as far as the side goes. And now let's see if what we have on the over-under. 68% of the bets are coming in on the over, and 73% of that is the money that's coming in. So more money is coming in on the over, less bets. So that tells you that a little bit of the sharper action, David,
Right.
is going in favor of the over in this game. So let's get right through it, man. Me and you. Look at this, -2.5 for Cleveland, 44.5. Now, my synopsis on this game, and I've been letting this all. I'm not just coming up cold to the plate here.
Right.
I mean, I've given these games a lot of thought all weekend long, doing some studying, just kind of letting the different scenarios kind of play out in my head. And the best scenario that I can come up with this. And here we are, old man against the young buck. Joe Flacco, what a story he is coming in to face the rookie C.J. Stroud, rookie of the year. I expect both of these teams just to show up for this game. I think Stroud proved the last week that he can live in the big moment. He's able to execute big plays. And the Texans can have some success. Now, their injuries with Tank Dell scare me at the end of the day, because I'd love to see him out there and part of this attack for the Texans. And they are having some receivers coming back off injury as well, with Robert Woods and Noah Brown, who are going to be available today. So I think they're going to be fine with C.J. Stroud being able to live in the moment. But the Browns are coming in with a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Right? This is just a wild card game. I think the mentality for both of these teams is that they both have nothing to lose, really. I think they both are somewhat playing with house money. I mean, the Browns on their 4th quarterback, the Texans in just their 1st year overachieving compared to what a lot of people thought that they would do. Picked to be one of the worst teams in the league, bottom 5 anyway. Yet here they are in the playoffs. So I think both teams show up. If that's going to be the case, then I think 44.5 is definitely too low. So I'm going to lean towards a higher scoring game. And the fact is that this game could be one of the more higher scoring games of the weekend as well. If you look at the passer props, Stroud is at 244.5 and Flacco is at 275.5. I'm not so sure that those aren't high enough in either case. I can't believe Stroud's only 244.5. To be honest, that seems really low to me. If you're looking at alternate passing yards, for 300 yards for Stroud is at plus 320, Flacco plus 168. If you're looking at touchdowns, and Flacco's been a touchdown machine, and I've been able to hop on him several weeks to be able to cash on his touchdowns. CJ Stroud has been pretty good in getting there a few times as well. But 2 touchdowns for Stroud is at plus 122. I mean, that seems like a good price to me. Stroud for 3 touchdowns plus 480. The Flacco passing touchdowns minus 120 to get to 2. Joe Flacco to get to 3 passing touchdowns is at plus 340. We saw Amari Cooper have over 200 yards receiving against the Texans just a few weeks back. How do you not like him at 78.5 yards? To be honest, I think he's a huge X factor for how Cleveland's going to perform today. And I think he's going to do well. I think Njoku does as well. And honestly, the Jerome Ford number for receiving yards at 14.5 seems very low. Now, he only had minus 2 yards receiving in that dominating win for the Cleveland Browns a few weeks back. But I think Flacco can have success here, even though the Browns defense, the Houston defense is a little underrated probably. The Browns defense does give up points on the road. So I just think that there's a chance for both of these teams here to have points. So I'm going to look at an over here, and I'm going to also look at the alternate over as well. Because if I'm going to play a ticket, which I have already, and just move the lines a little bit, Dave, not even super crazy here. At over 47.5 is a plus 132. I think even at over 51.5 to get plus 220 is a good shot. Can these teams climb to the upper 20s, low 30s? I think they can even do that, to be honest. So if you really want to get super frisky and just really give it a shot, it's plus 540 for that. Both of these teams will try to run the ball, but I think they're just going to be happy when they're finding success through the air. And I think that's the game plan that they're going to both end up sticking to at the end of the day. Houston Texans win last week by probably running the ball against Indianapolis a little bit more. I'm not so sure that formula does work against Cleveland. Denzel Ward banged up a little bit as well for Cleveland, so we'll see how effective he is, although that secondary is deep. But I think Stroud's going to be able to show up. Might be a little bit tough for the rookie at first. That's why I think the Browns can probably win this game as well, just because the Houston Texans really are the new kid on the block. And I think at the end of the day, the playoff experience for Flacco does matter to some extent for the Browns to go ahead and win. So I think it's a close game. I really do. So I'd be reluctant on any kind of alternate line for a side. If Texans do win, it's close. Better chance for Cleveland to have an alternate line win by 10 or 13 or whatever. So if you need to move a side, I think Cleveland's the better one to move in that aspect if you must. But I would stretch that over-under up a little bit. I think this is a higher scoring game, and I'll take the over. How about you, David?
Yeah, so Cleveland on the road, Steve, I think is what makes us a little bit more comfortable with this over. And this is probably one of the games that I'm actually comfortable with an over because I don't think we're going to see too many of those, with some weather games we have coming up that we'll get into. But this one I do feel pretty comfortable. Steve, I'm just going to leave it right where it's at, to be honest with you, 44.5 over here for me. And I'm going to look for Nico Collins to really get involved today. If there's no Dell, that just takes one less weapon away from Stroud. So Collins gets really involved today, Steve, and I like Njoku. His baseline is 54.5 right now. Now, it's only minus 140, so if you want to play a little bit of an alternate on that, I think you certainly have room to do that. I think anywhere from the 54.5 to maybe even 65, as you figure he's definitely going to get involved. Flacco is going to try and find him. And I'll tell you what, Steve, if Flacco is going to throw 2 or 3 touchdowns today, I think the chances are pretty high. One of them goes to Njoku. So my 3 players today to look out for, obviously you have Amari Cooper in there, but I'm going to look for Njoku and Collins to really get involved. And then maybe a little Singletary on the ground for the Houston Texans as well. But I do like the over, Steve. Baseline, if you wanted to move it, I wouldn't get too crazy with it. Maybe go up to about 48 or 49 if you want to get a plus number out of it, Steve.
If you want to take Cooper and Njoku and Collins for a touchdown, that'd be one touchdown each for Nico Collins, David Njoku, and Amari Cooper. $10 wins you 160. So that's not the worst thing in the world, to be honest.
Right.
If you think they're going to get it through the air. Any other touchdown scorers today? Singletary plus 110, Jerome Ford plus 115, Kareem Hunt plus 190, Dalton Schultz plus 260, Elijah Moore back from injury as well plus 350. Noah Brown plus 420 is a good number for Noah Brown today to score a touchdown. That really, really is a good one. So I would probably put him in something as well. Let's see here. Damian Pierce 5-1. CJ Stroud is at plus 550. Robert Woods plus 650 is an interesting number as well for a touchdown. Those are two guys that could score today, Woods and Noah Brown. And if you parlayed those two together, just those two guys, $10 went you $350. So that's not the craziest thing in the world if you want to get a couple of wide receivers who should get opportunities. Anyway, let's see. 2 touchdowns today for Singletary is plus 700. Ford plus 750. Amari Cooper 11-1. Nico Collins 12-1. Kareem Hunt 14-1. And Njoku 14-1. So David, yeah, I just think Cleveland is going to maybe have a little too much firepower at the end of the day, and I think they can move on to the next round. Nice season, Texans. Better days still ahead for you, I think.
Right. Well, and Steve, you said it well. I think it's going to come down to the experience that the Browns have over there. So very well put. Because this time of year, that stuff really matters. Like you said, Texans, new kids on the block. But let's if this is how the blueprint for that organization is going to go, let's expect them to be there a little bit more often. And start giving, them a little bit of respect as well.
All right. The night game is Kansas City as they host Miami on Peacock. So if you're looking for it on normal TV, know that you need to go to the streaming app, Peacock, to be able to watch this game. All right. Make sure your parents are good to go. Everyone who needs help with the remote to find things, see what you can do about getting their game on for them this evening. There are going to be some frustrated people at some point who are clueless to know that this game is not on Peacock, David.
Right.
You can just kind of picture somewhere in
which is just ridiculous.
Rural
anyway.
Kansas, as a man, a long day working on the farm, comes in. All right, let's flip on the Chiefs game. We can't find it. So Chiefs minus 4.5, 43.5 here. And I think the path for success for both of these teams definitely runs through the ground game. Miami, we've heard it all week about how Tua can't play in these kind of conditions. This team is rapidly kind of like the slow whirl of the toilet, David, where at the top is going really, really slow in the circle. And as you're getting towards the bottom, it starts to speed up. That's the feeling you get when you look at the Dolphins season right now. And the Kansas City Chiefs are getting ready to flush that toilet once and for all to dispose of them. But I think there is a path of victory for Miami in this game. I say that because the Chiefs just haven't been good all year. The last time they were good was against the Bears. We just talked to Nick Athen about it. He expects them to come out. He thinks that they're prepared. This is going to be their best game in a long time. But they just haven't been able to show that at any moment.
Right.
Now, the conditions are miserable. I know when it's this cold, it's not even the cold. It actually physically hurts your skin.
Yeah.
It just hurts when you're out in this kind of stuff. So we're going to see it bundle up. You're going to have layers. It's going to slow this game down a little bit. I think your best chance is to run the ball, although don't be shocked when McDaniel has the Chiefs loading up on the box because he's able to run the ball successfully against Kansas City, and then that's when they pop Tyreek on some kind
Goes
of
right over
quick
the top.
slant when they find man coverage or something like that. But I think there is a path for Miami to win this game with the run game. If I were to have to bet this game, I do not think I would lay the points with the Chiefs. I think I would have to take them just on the straight money line. Although laying minus 230 and minus 4.5 seems kind of crazy to me, to be honest. I think that Dolphins have a chance here But I'm just going to trust that the run game, which I think will be the approach by both of these teams because they're quite capable, is what's going to be the thing that dominates the pace of this game. So when you run the ball, the clock runs. It's just as simple as that. Chunks at a time. And for that reason, I just think 43.5 is going to be too much. It takes a lot to get to 43.5 in the NFL. If you have one scoreless quarter in this game, then you're going to be very, very hard pressed to get that 43.5 because I don't think you're going to get more than 14 points in a quarter here unless we do have turnover, which could happen. We saw some weather issues last week where we had turnovers. But that was rain. There was no precipitation here. I expect a good game from Pacheco. I expect a good game from Achane and Mostert, and where you took the wide receivers all for a touchdown last week, you can probably do that this week with these guys, with the running backs, to be honest. So we'll look at those numbers in a minute. But my first instinct is a close game. There definitely is a path for Miami to win this game. Their injuries do concern me, but they're going to have monster games out of those running backs. And I think for that reason alone, game plan for both sides probably, because Pacheco runs hard too. I mean, he runs as hard as anyone. And when that guy's running super hard, how easy is it going to be to tackle him when it's this cold?
Right.
To be honest. So 43.5, I think is too many points unless they run too good and run their way past this total. But I'm going to take into account that they're not going to be able to hit home runs for the most part. It's going to be chunks at a time. Thus, the clock runs. Thus, we get an under. And honestly, if we're talking that, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes alternate under to some extent too, like mid-30s, under 35.5 or something like that. So, Dave, what are your thoughts here?
So, Steve, initial thoughts is definitely an under game. I stopped by the studio last night in my travels, and I think the only thing I could talk to you about was how this game is going under. So I'm a real big believer in that. It's just the weather is going to play such a factor in this. It's hard to want to do anything when it's that cold. I know that, Steve. We know you know that as well. We've all been, in that kind of, temperatures before. Maybe not exactly that cold, but, you can imagine what that's going to feel like. And so this is going to go under, Steve, and I like the Pacheco angle, and I like the Dolphins. If they're going to do anything, I think it's going to have to be with the legs of Mostert. He's the guy that I probably trust on that field the most, Steve. I made a kind of early season trade for him in fantasy. Things weren't going very good. And I tell you what, Steve, he almost single-handedly took me to the championship game, which I ended up losing. But still, second place is not bad, and he had a huge part to do with that. So I'm going to put a lot of trust in him in this game if the Dolphins are going to be able to do anything. So I would definitely look at the Mostert props today, see what you can find there. But, Steve, I'll finish off this game with this. This is a tough game in my eyes to kind of handicap here because both of these teams, Steve, untrustworthy in my eyes. This is not the Kansas City team we're used to seeing. And the Dolphins, yeah, they had a great season. But, Steve, they don't beat anybody who's a good team. They lose to all the good teams, and they blow out all the bad teams. So you tell me how that's going to translate here in this game in the cold, cold weather. I just don't give much hopes, a team coming from Miami, Florida, where it was 84 degrees yesterday, and now they're coming to about 0. So I don't have much hope for them here, Steve. But then again, Kansas City doesn't wow me either. So I think the best play here is a alternate under total of probably somewhere about 35.
I think definitely turnovers decides this game, Dave.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The Chiefs total points 24.5. That seems too high for me, to be honest. I don't know if the Dolphins 19.5 is too low because I could see them scoring 20 or getting 3 touchdowns anyway. Let's see here. What else do we got? As far as the passing props go for tonight, Mahomes is 239.5. Tua is 229.5. Both of those numbers have dropped. I I don't think we're going to see any alternate overs, so I don't even want to go over those. But if you want to, well, I'll just give them the, I guess. Let's see. Mahomes alternate passing yards. 300 is at plus 390 for him. 300 for Tua is at plus 490. Wow, so you are getting big prices if this game does go completely sideways. I just know it hurts in this kind of cold weather. I don't know how you're going to be able to execute a wide open type of offense here. I think it just has to be let's slug it at the other guy's throat, run it down at him. Let's see how many yards we can gain at every certain time. Mahomes, 3+ touchdown passes, plus 320. Tua for 3+ is at plus 560. The rushing props, Pacheco is 65.5. Now, I bumped him I have a risk-free, Dave, where I have the, basically what I did is I took alternate under in this game just a little bit, alternate over in the Texans game just a little bit, and I put Pacheco as my only prop on this ticket to get for 50 yards rushing.
Nice.
So
I like that.
So I lowballed him there. Mahomes rushing 25.5. Tua's 5.5. Clyde Edwards-Helaire 11.5. Tua could get that 5.5 from running away from Chris Jones, to be honest. Raheem Mostert 45.5. Not that many guys do run away from him. He usually catches them. Devin Achane is at 48.5. So we finally saw those numbers come up on the board. We don't have any alternate yards except for Pacheco listed. They may find some 100+ yards for Pacheco is plus 320. I think the Mostert and Achane numbers are low. I think 48.5 rushing for both of those guys. 45.5 for Mostert is fine. On the receiving end of things, let's see, Achane is 16.5 for receive yards. I would think that might be an over as well. Waddle's 48.5. Durham, Smythe, 17.5. Good old Smithy. Tyreek Hill, 86.5. Kelsey, 57.5. Rashee Rice, 65.5. Justin Watson, 20.5. That seems low, to be honest. Pacheco, 18.5. Seems low for receiving yards. Noah Gray, 9.5. Mecole Hardman, 13.5. We do have alternate receiving yards on Mecole Hardman, who was the number one receiver in that garbage game last week. You're wondering if you might get more opportunity, to be honest. But just 40 yards for Hardman is at plus 580. How about that? That's kind of interesting in a weird way.
Right.
25 yards for him is at plus 220. Alternate receiving yards for Achane. To get to 40 yards is plus 520. 25 yards is plus 182. That would be an interesting little parlay just for Hardman and Achane to have 40 yards receiving each. $10 would win you $340 if you wanted to do that. I don't think that's asking too much, to be honest, in the cold weather game.
No, not at all.
Hardman on the old end around inside pitch play, you know what I'm saying, as he scurries around. You might get one of those. But interesting numbers here as far as some of the receiver props, just low-hanging fruit. That, you know, there are going to be some receiver yards. So if there are, and you're getting some real low numbers, you might want to jump on those. Just don't expect the high ones to get all theirs, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, if you're going to pick anything on the receivers, try to hit one of these low-hanging guys on something that makes sense, like an Achane to get a screen pass and to be able to break it for 25, 30 yards.
It only takes one.
Yep, it only takes one. Anything else here for you, Dave?
So lastly, Steve, we were talking about that under, and I think I'm going to do it. Under 35 points tonight, plus 246. I like that.
All right, good number there. I'm going to take the under as a primary play. So my main plays would be over the first game, Houston, Cleveland, under the second game, Miami and Kansas City.
Right.
I think Miami does have a path to victory here. So I don't think it's a Chiefs walk. And I would favor Cleveland as the more likely side of any of those four to maybe move on from Saturday. Okay, 1 o'clock on Sunday, Pittsburgh and Buffalo. Steelers and the Bills. Bills minus 9.5, 33.5. Steeler Nation getting excited. The Steelers taking money. They're coming in with a nothing to lose mentality for the most part. Again, we could have snow. We could have wind. We definitely have cold temperatures. We're definitely going to have wind.
Oh, yeah.
So do we get some snow as well? We definitely could. So it's Bills 9.5, 33.5. If we have sideways winds, and apparently it does matter if you're there. If the winds are crazy, it really does make life difficult, according to the Buffalo fan intel that I was looking over. People who watched games firsthand there in those kind of conditions. So again, here we go with the running game. I think you got to lean on Najee, and I think you can lean on old James Cook here, because you're not going to be able to scramble Allen in this kind of game. You're going to have to be able to hand the ball off. So I would look for some more receiving stuff. And quite frankly, if it's going to be sideways wind, et cetera, and you're throwing field goals off the table, now we're talking about this over-under probably being too low. I want to make a case for the over and the Bills to win this game, something like 34-17, but I'm not so sure. I think we could get a lot of running. Najee Harris is 60.5 for his baseline. James Cook, 65.5. Josh Allen, 39.5. Now, if you're going to do some kind of same game parlay, I like bumping these guys down in case you get bad beat. So maybe take 50 yards for Harris or 50 yards for Cook. Josh Allen, 39.5. 4.5 for Mason Rudolph. He can't get 5 yards rushing. The passing props, Josh Allen just 198.5. Mason Rudolph just 144.5. Rudolph's was really low last week, and he went under by far in his. So the Steelers were really run dependent in that scenario. This is a harder game for me because I think the weather does definitely neutralizes a lot of what Buffalo wants to try to do. I think the Steelers definitely have a puncher's chance to win this game. The only thing I played on my ticket going forward from my overplay and my underplay in the previous two games is I just threw the Bills money line on here.
Right.
Straight up. Just to straight up get a win here. I think Buffalo somehow figures out a way to at least get by the Steelers. I think the Steelers can keep this competitive. If Buffalo wins by 14 or 21 points, that wouldn't shock me either. But I think this is more of a grinded out, lower scoring game again. And I could see the score being something like, 20-10, 17-9, 14-9, even something like that. If we get a scoreless quarter and just 6 points in another quarter, then you're asking to make up 28 points in the second half to beat you. You know how it is, though. You got guys like Diggs and Gabe Davis. All it takes is one blown coverage and Allen to be able to cut that guy through the wind, and it's off to the races. So scary to play with such a low over-under in this game. I think you just have to trust the weather factor here. That is going to be a mess.
Right.
And it's going to keep it that way.
Exactly.
So give me an under in this one as well. I think the Bills win, but I would not lay the points here overall. What do you got, Dave?
So Steve, I'm in agreement with you there. I imagine this game to be a grinded out type of game. I like the under, but you know what?
I wish it was in a dome because I think it could be a fun
oh yeah, absolutely.
higher scoring game.
Absolutely. But I like the Steelers with the points. I have +9 right now, and I got to figure if it's going to be a grinded out game. Steelers defense isn't terrible. So I think that they're able to keep this close, and I think the weather kind of helps them do that, Steve. So those are the two things that I take away the most here. But I tell you what, if this is going to be a grinded out type of game, you're getting a +235 Najee Harris anytime touchdown, and I'm all over that, Steve. If they're pounding the rock, it's going to be Jaylen Warren and Najee, but you got to figure down by the goal line. It's going to be Najee, and he's going to, punch one in there. So I love that number for him, Steve. So give me a Najee touchdown. Give me the Steelers with the points, and I do believe the game goes under.
Najee was dormant for most of the season, and we said a few weeks before the end of the season, maybe start to look out for Najee to wake up here. They're going to need to get this guy going. And that's certainly been the case. So I've been on Najee from the get-go. I would take him here. The one prop, he was getting pass targets last week, and his pass number is just 7.5 for receiving yards. If it's going to be windy, the short passing game does come into play here. So 7.5 is going to be low for Najee Harris for receiving yards for me. So I would take a look at that over. Jalen Warren kind of falls in that category too, at 16.5. So you could take both of those guys over. Freiermuth is just 18.5. So I could see a scenario where you can bet all three of those guys and get paid plus 525. And you need Freiermuth for 19 yards, Warren for 17, and Najee for 8 altogether. Pickens is just 35.5 for his receiving yards. Deontay Johnson, 33.5. So they're not giving much stock to Mason Rudolph here. But I think the short passing game does come into play. Don't forget, someone like Deontay Johnson or even Pickens could take an end around.
Right.
And get that inside pass. And that could count for receiving yards again as well. Diggs is 56.5. Kincaid, 31.5. Passing prop wise with the alternate, if you really want to go that route. Josh Allen for 275 plus yards is at plus 640. Mason Rudolph for 225 plus yards is up 8-1. Wow, I've never seen it that high for such a low number. That's crazy. Josh Allen, 2 touchdowns plus 138, 3 touchdowns plus 550. Mason Rudolph for 2 touchdowns passing plus 520. So some good numbers to be had. I just think, you might be able to get there on the short passing game with these touchdowns, to be honest, because they're going to have to fake the ball. They're going to have to do some fake running at some point. Why not buy the goal line to try to get an easy score?
Right.
A little 10-yard pass. You should be able to throw that in the wind anyway, right?
Little check downs.
Right. So I want to go over here, but I'm going to lean under at the end of the day, and I just think the Bills find a way to win. Anything else, Dave?
No, Steve, I'm with you. I think it's a close game, but the Bills find somehow, some way at home.
Let's see here. Team points for, let's see here. Where are my team points? Off the board. I guess they're off the board. I just have first drive result where they usually are. Okay. All right. So team points off the board for the moment. 2 touchdown scorers, though. Let's look at our running backs first. Actually, Najee Harris at 20-1. Not bad for 2 touchdowns, Dave. 37-1 for Jalen Warren. How about that? James Cook, 14-1. Diggs, 13-1. Josh Allen, 9-1. Dalton Kincaid, 14-1. Pickens, 75-1. Deontay Johnson, 75-1. Leonard Fournette, you could sit touchdown Lenny in the postseason. 85-1 for 2 touchdowns today. Even a $2 bet pays 170. So maybe take some of these long shot guys for 2 touchdowns on the running back front anyway. Leonard Fournette is interesting at 85-1. Najee Harris for 2. Leonard Fournette for 2 touchdown parlay. $2 pays $1,350. So
Not mad at that.
Well, you figure they're going to score. It might be on the ground. So just throwing it out there. But I do like a lower scoring game at the end of the day.
Right. Well, Steve, where did you want to take those team points?
There's not much room to move it. If I'm going to move anything like this down, as far as an alternate number goes, is that what we're talking about, alternate numbers? I would take under 29.5 at plus 176, potentially. Is that what you wanted, Dave?
Yeah, it was the actual team.
Oh, yeah, I don't see it. Do you have it listed?
I do have it.
What do you got?
Well, I have, depending on where you want to go with it, your first plus number is going to be the Bills at over 23.5. That's at plus 115. And the Steelers, real low hanging here. Your first plus number there is plus 135 for 13.5.
So if they get to 14 points, you get plus 135?
Yep.
Interesting.
The Bills, you have to climb up the ladder a little bit to get a decent number. And with the weather, I'm just not so sure that happens.
All right, so good entertainment for lunchtime tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in Buffalo. All right, the matinee game. Is that the matinee game? I guess it is.
It would be, yep.
The Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas is -7 and 50.5. Oh, wow. What can you say about Jordan Love and the Packers? Although they've hit their bumps in the road, they at least seem to still grow every time. If you look at like a line chart that's increasing the stock, at some point you're going to see that stock just dip a little bit of a hair, and then it continues to trend up. Dip a little bit, continue to trend up. And that's just the way that I visualize the Packers right now at this moment in time. While the Cowboys are kind of up there, but up and down, up and down, up and down a little bit. And sometimes they can have that huge drop in the line graph, and that can be their detriment at the end of the day. And I'm wondering if they can somehow, Mike McCarthy, shoot themselves in the foot here again. Just the way that he's operated that 2-minute drill in past weeks hasn't been the best. And, the Packers, you talk about teams with nothing to lose whatsoever. Yes, Green Bay and Dallas, or Green Bay overall. Cowboys have everything to lose.
Exactly.
It's Super Bowl or bust for them. But the Packers are playing with house money here. The Cowboys score a lot of points at home. I think the Packers are going to be able to help get to this total of 50.5. I think that this is too low. I think this can be a higher scoring game for sure. And can the Packers win this game? I actually think that they can. Do I think that they will? I'm not so sure.
Right.
I'm hesitant to pick a side here. I want to see all that play out. I just have a better feel for the totals this week more than anything. So I'm going to lean back with my total feeling here and go over the total of 50.5. Both of these teams can get off passing prop wise. Dak is at 275.5. Jordan Love is at 242.5. I think that's too low for Love. Jordan Love alternate passing yards for 300 is at plus 350. Dak alternate yards is at 300 yards is at plus 168. Dak touchdowns for 3 is at plus 198. Jordan Love for 3 touchdowns is plus 310. The Packers have a ton of different receivers they can throw to. Dontavian Wicks has come out of nowhere. University of Virginia kid right here from our home state. 2 touchdowns last week for Wicks. I've had him 2 weeks ago. Probably should have jumped back on him last week as well. But he is stealing the points when they get into the red zone. Jaden Reed's been fantastic as well. We get Christian Watson back. They still have Romeo Dobbs. Now Tucker Kraft has been their tight end, but Luke Musgraves was their starting tight end, and now he's back as well. And maybe they have this little 2-touchdown tight end prong attack that they can throw at you with these other receivers as well. Excuse me. But you have some low numbers on these receivers, on some of these guys anyway. CD is 100.5. Pollard 17.5. Cooks 39.5. Jake Ferguson 44.5. Aaron Jones 19.5. Jaden Reed 47.5. Tucker Kraft 27.5. Dontavian Wicks 30.5 seems too low to me. Romeo Dobbs 31.5 seems too low to me. Musgrave 17.5. We'll see if he gets back into the action. Michael Gallup all the way down to 10.5. What has happened to him? Jalen Tolbert's been a target for Dak, 12.5 just for him. Christian Watson just 31.5 for him. I think you can go alternate on a lot of these guys. And they're giving you a lot of alternate receiving yard numbers for some of these guys as well. For Wicks too. I mean, Wicks for 50 yards is at plus 225. The touchdown numbers are good too. As far as the 2 touchdown scores, they get even better. But you're getting good prices on just about everyone who's not named CD Lamb or Tony Pollard. Aaron Jones is plus 130. Jaden Reed plus 175. Jake Ferguson plus 185. Brandon Cooks plus 210. Dak plus 230. Watson plus 230. Rico Dowdle plus 290. Romeo Dobbs plus 290. Dontavian Wicks and a Noah Brown parlay for touchdowns would be good. And our little round robin, those would be good ones to have. Wicks plus 370. Kraft plus 390. Gallup plus 500. I just expect points here, Dave. I think we can get a shootout. Fun game. Sunday afternoon. Lots of points happen in that stadium anyway. What do you got for me?
Right, yeah. So, Steve, Cowboys play, really, really good football at home. I think that, somehow this was a road game for them in the playoffs. we'd be talking a little bit different. I'd probably take CD for 2, but I like the Jaden Reed alternate receiving yards. I would go up to about 60 at plus 125. You get a little bit better if you think he can get to 70, which it could be possible. Plus 195 there. And I think the Packers somehow can just hang around in this game. And I think I might take them with the points as well, Steve. But I definitely like Jaden Reed to be Love's kind of top target. We've kind of seen that through the back half of the season anyway. So, Steve, give me the Packers with the points and give me some Jaden Reed receiving props. You got to figure he's going to have a lot to do with it if they're scoring some points.
2 touchdowns for Pollard is plus 380. CD Lamb plus 430. Aaron Jones plus 850. Jaden Reed 15-1 is live, I think. Jake Ferguson 15-1. Brandon Cooks 19-1. Christian Watson 22-1. Dobbs 29-1. There's Dontavian Wicks, 2 touchdowns last week, 43-1. All right, so some good numbers to be had in this game for sure. Luke Musgrave coming back from injury, 100-1 for 2 touchdowns. And he was the primary tight end before Kraft, who is 45-1 himself for 2 touchdowns. So I think a fun game, over game down in Big D, David.
Absolutely. Steve, you think Dak Prescott and Jordan Love can combine for 6+ passing touchdowns?
Yes.
Plus 275 in a wild card special.
Interesting. Let me see if I can parlay those together on my ticket and see what they do. So what is that? That's 6 combined, so it can go either
Pass
way.
Touchdowns, yep. So
Yeah.
either way, Prescott,
So if you figure it's 3 and it's 3, let's just see if they're trying to pull the old switcheroo on you.
They probably are.
The host here. All right, if I do 3 for each of them,
In a same
I get
game.
plus 719.
That's much better.
All right, so beware of those.
Where they try to get you.
All right, night game, Rams and Lions -3, 51.5. The Rams are a very public team this week. Everyone loves the Rams. Everyone loves the story here. Another subplot game. Here comes Stafford back to Detroit. Jared Goff jettisoned from the Rams himself. McVay could not win with them. He needed to go. Dan Campbell took him in under his wing. We can do this kind of thing together, Jared. And they've been very good. Detroit has been very good in their efforts in turning that franchise around. They're strong in the trenches, which I think helps in this game. The Rams, a very, very public team. Let's see where the bets are coming in on this one. Let's see here. And I should just rewind real quick. It looks like split action with over 80% of the bets on the under in the Chiefs game. 90% of the money has been bet on the under in the Chiefs game. How about that?
Wow.
And then also, we need to go to tomorrow. Stand by.
51.5 might be low for these two teams.
About even split with Pittsburgh and Buffalo, although the smarter money is on Pittsburgh. And again, a huge amount of bets are on the under in the Steeler game. And then with the Packer game and Cowboy game, 73% of the money's on Green Bay, and they only have 44% of the bets. So that is a lot of strong money on Green Bay.
No doubt.
And the over is coming in at a whopping 83% overall bets and money. All right, so the Rams. The Rams are taking 75% of the bets and 81% of the money in this game with Detroit. The total is 77% over by the public, even split on the money with the bets with the total over. So all the public is on the over this game. All the public is on the Rams in this game as well. So everyone loves the Rams here in this game with the Lions. Now, I think the Lions have a hard time with the receivers for the Rams. I do think that's the case. But I'm wondering if the Lions can't just be supercharged enough to carry their own weight here.
Right.
I guess like the public here, I do like the over. It's a lot of points. I kind of do tend towards the over. I do see a scenario here, though, where Detroit's running the ball to keep the Rams off of the field. Detroit does like to run the ball a lot. So if that's the case, then we could be getting an under. Remember the Cowboys-Lions game a few weeks back? What was that score at halftime? That was like 7-0 or something like that, at least right before halftime. So I'm wondering if we can't get the same type of deal again with the Rams and the Lions. Now, Stafford could come in there and start throwing the ball everywhere, and Campbell could have the old plan golf, let's go out and get your old team, and you can throw the ball around too. If that's the case, mixed in with some good runs, then I think we definitely get over. I'm wondering if Detroit gets too over-dependent on the run to keep this game under. I think I'm going to trust, at the end of the day, the over. I just think there's too many superstars on both sides of the ball, the least of which is Jahmyr Gibbs, for sure, which I think you're going to get a big effort out of him in this game, through the receiving game, the running game, whatever. Montgomery as well, the banger. But for touchdowns, Kyron Williams -150, Gibbs -140, Montgomery -130, Kupp +115, St. Brown +110, Puka +135. Sam Laporta has been practicing +155, Jamison Williams +320. Receiving prop baselines, Kupp 68.5, Puka 76.5, St. Brown 87.5, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think too low at 19.5. Montgomery 8.5, Kyron Williams 15.5. That's probably too low. Jamison Williams 34.5. DeMarcus Robinson 42.5. Rushing props wise, Kyron's 82.5, Gibbs 50.5, Montgomery 54.5, Goff 1.5 for his, Stafford 1.5 for his. Give me both of the quarterbacks. They'll both go under. Watch. If you parlay both the quarterbacks over 1.5 yards rushing, that pays 3-1. But Dave, I'm going to lean with an over here. It's kind of scary. On my ticket that I did for all weekend, I did an alt line with the over, and I moved it down to 45.5 actually. So I'm going to play the bad beat scenario in this game.
There you go.
And hook that to my other tickets as well. That's going to be the name of the game for me on this one. But I think a fun game for sure. I can't get on the side of the public with the Rams. I think if either team moves on, I'm going to give the favor to the Lions. I think they win it in the trenches. And I think that's the difference. So give me the Lions at home here, and what will be, I would say, a game that ends up 27-21 Detroit, barely going under the total. But my alt number of moving the total over down a few points will come off the payout at the end of the day. What do you got here?
So I think it's green light, Steve. This is one of those games that we talk about where it's, green light for everybody. This could be a Sunday night shootout. I like 54.5 if we're going to think, offense. And like I said, Steve, I think it's open for just about any of the usual suspects that we've been using all year. Why would that stop now? But Steve, you know what? I'm going to take the Rams going into Detroit on the money line to take this game. It's just something telling me great storyline, but I like the Rams in this game. Detroit, very good team, very good efforts, like you mentioned, to turn this thing around, and they probably should win. But I'm going to take a chance.
Why do you get the feeling they're going to shoot themselves in the foot? The referee's coming to play.
It's just
something weird at the end of the game just happens there.
It's just the Detroit way that it's always kind of been. You know what I mean?
Right,
so
right.
It just seems it's got all the makings to be exactly. It's got all the makings to be an incredible game, but I'm just going to take the dog here with the Rams going into Detroit and taking this one.
2 touchdown scores in this game. Let's see here. Kyron's +390, Jahmyr Gibbs +420, David Montgomery +470, Kupp +750, St. Brown +750, Puka plus 950. Laporta, 13-1. Jameson Williams, 33-1. Demarcus Robinson, 35-1. Tyler Higbee, 41-1. I think you can definitely have fun with some of these guys. Take 4 guys and throw them in a for a score, like Puka, Demarcus Robinson, and a St. Brown. How about that? Just those 3 guys alone. Pay 19-1 if you want to get a little frisky on that. A St. Brown, a Puka, and a Demarcus Robinson touchdown, 19-1. That's not the worst thing in the world.
Not at all.
So there's fun stuff to be had. Should be a fun game there on Sunday night for sure. Let's see here. Last game, Eagles and the Buccaneers, and then we'll get into some hockey and we'll take a break. Philadelphia -3 at Tampa Bay, 43.5. Dave, I'll let you start. What about this for you?
Steve, something, and you're going to be like, what is this guy talking about? Something tells me, Steve, Philadelphia skidding into the playoffs. That is not how you want to come in. If you've been keeping up with this, chances are you have. If you're listening or watching the show, there is just not a good formula skidding into the playoffs like that, like Philadelphia has. Steve, something's telling me take Tampa here. They have that experience. So does Philly in that regard, but it's a home game for Tampa. Philly just really, really rocky, as I mentioned, coming in, and that usually doesn't work in the playoffs when you come in like that. Doesn't matter what sport it is. We saw it with the Capitals just a couple years ago, hockey regards, where they didn't play well down the stretch, still managed to get in, and they were bounced in 5 games, I believe. So it's just scenarios like that when you don't come in, playing your best football when you need to be, can really make you worry here, Steve. So I like Tampa in this one. Give me the money line, and probably the points as well. 2.5 is what they're getting, plus 100. The money line's plus 120. So with that kind of number, Steve, they're really not that big of an underdog when you probably think they should be. We've seen Philly, be the better of these 2 teams all year. But Steve, you've been pretty high on Tampa Bay. They were slated to be real bad, and you called that from the beginning. So let's give you some credit there. You said that there's no way that this team, only wins 5 games or so, and you nailed it. So good call there, Steve. I'm taking Tampa Bay though.
Dave calling for the outright upset here. This is the hardest game for me on the slate, Dave. And where I want to try to make a case for Philadelphia, they just haven't shown me anything that they are not You talk about teams who aren't trustworthy. It's definitely the Eagles. Now, the Buccaneers have been just skating by only because I think they're so banged up and old man style. They're just I felt the rigors of the season here. But I think they have enough gas in the tank themselves for one more, Dave.
I think so.
Here's what I would suspect, though, for a game plan. And this goes back to the game in which the Eagles had success against Tampa Bay on that Monday night game. And that was one of my better wins of the year when I took an alternate under in the Cincinnati Rams game as well as the Philadelphia Tampa game with the Eagles money line. I didn't want to lay the points because I didn't trust in the Eagles. But DeAndre Swift had a really, really good game that game. And ever since then, week 1, they've laid off of him. I think they need to realize this is the game where DeAndre Swift gets back into action here. Plus 200 for an anytime touchdown for Swift, I think is a good play today, even though Hurts steals all of them. Hurts is minus 115 for a touchdown. Rashad White's minus 110. Mike Evans minus 105. Godwin's plus 220. Dallas Goedert plus 250. Julio Jones, who's been scoring a little bit, plus 310. Now, the thing to me is this. I think DeAndre Swift does get into the end zone today or Monday night. He's going to be part of the scoring for Philadelphia. I think they probably play a little bit better because they're going to be a little bit more run dependent. But the secondary is what I think is going to let him down at the end of the day. And I think Mike Evans can have a good game in this game. He dropped what would have been a sure touchdown pass last week on a bomb play. I don't think he's going to drop that ball again.
Right.
I think if that ball comes to him as he's streaking through the Eagles secondary, he's going to be able to score. 68.5 is his baseline, 56.5 for Godwin. Trey Palmer, 24.5. Rashad White, 21.5. I don't have the Eagles on the board right now, probably because of the A.J. Brown injury. Rushing props for Rashad White, 63.5. Swift is at 63.5, although he could get some in the receiving game as well to counteract that. Chase Edmonds, 12.5. Hurts, 34.5. But I would do this, Dave. I would take a look at Mike Evans to score and maybe even score 2. Plus 700 for 2 touchdowns. I think that's fair. Rashad White's plus 600. Jalen Hurts is plus 550. DeAndre Swift is at 16-1. Now, I think if you want to take an Eagle, take Swift.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked if we have 2 from Evans, 2 from Swift in this game. And what should be an under in the Monday night game, in which it was last time, I think the Buccaneers have a little bit more wits about themselves. They make a few more plays, and this game can actually trend to be an over game on Monday night. So I'll look at this to be a little bit more of an over game. Maybe not much more than what the total is suggesting. We're right now at just 43, but I can see this as a final score of 24-21 Tampa Bay or something like that. 27-24. I think the Buccaneers can have success against the Eagles defense. And Baker's going to be the big X factor here.
Right.
If he has a bad game, then Tampa's going to sputter in their steps. I think the Eagles secondary is bad enough to where these good wide receivers who are very veteran presence, as we mentioned before, are going to be able to take them into that next step. So give me the over slightly in this game. Give me some touchdowns by Swift. Give me a touchdown by Evans, and I'll just call it a day on that. Does Baker get over 234 yards passing? Probably. I think that's probably too low. Hurts at 219. I think it's priced just about right. I would look at more at DeAndre Swift. But you like the outright upset, Dave?
I do.
I could see the upset as well in this game. I think the stronger play for me, though, would be to lean over, as I think Philly can get back to the running game a little bit here, get a little bit of success, and kind of right the ship, hopefully, and not for their sake, and not do what they did last week against.
Well, it's like you
Giants.
mentioned, Steve. It's the secondary.
Right.
Now, that defense hasn't shown us within the last couple of weeks anything at all that, like you said, makes you want to trust them. So, all very good points, Steve. I think if Philly is going to do it, it's gonna be on Swift and it's going to be on Hurts.
All right, let's go ahead and do our best bets for the weekend and our 2 touchdown scores. We'll do a little hockey, and then we'll throw Dave Del Grande on here after a quick commercial break.
Johnny. 4 weeks. 20 papers, that's $2 plus tip.
Gee, Johnny, I don't have a dime. Sorry.
Didn't ask for a dime. $2.
I give you 2.5 and a Ric Flair. It's a jungle out there. You got to look out for number 1, but don't step at number 2.
Utah.
This will be a great movie
2
marathon.
times. Who got that nickname because he said everything twice? Like,
I'm going to go get the papers.
All right, Dave, who are your best chances to get a couple of touchdowns this weekend?
All right, best chances, I think, here, Steve. Give me Njoku for the Browns. You're going to get a really nice number on that. If the Dolphins do anything, I think it's on the legs of Mostert, so give me him for 2 as well. I'm going to take Najee Harris in the Steelers versus the Bills for 2. I think that's a pretty good play there. Packers, Cowboys, boring. Give me CeeDee Lamb for 2 in there. Rams, Lions, that is a tougher call. I think you could go with maybe St. Brown or Kyron Williams, whichever you want to do for their respective teams. And if we're going Philly and Tampa Bay here, that I believe is probably the toughest one. Steve, as you mentioned, I think it would either have to be Hurts down there at the goal line, that little push they like to do, or the Mayfield to Evans connection. So give me Evans.
I'll start there, and I like the Evans for mine as well, and I'll look at DeAndre Swift potentially and that one. I'm going to take a look at Jahmyr Gibbs for the Lions to get to, and I also think Puka has a good matchup for the guy who's covering him. He's given up a ton of scores, so don't doubt if Puka can get in there a couple of times. He's an emerging superstar for sure. Let's see here. Cowboys and Packers. Man, I mean, take a long stab on Dontavian Wicks again. I mean, he's getting a huge number. Jaden Reed's a good number as well, and I like your CD angle, of course. Najee's a good angle, Dave. I would play those first three you told me all together for sure. If anyone's going to score twice for Pittsburgh, I think it is Najee. Give me some James Cook on Buffalo, though, to counteract that on the ground for 2. I don't think we get any 2-touchdown scores in the game tonight, but if we do, give me Devin Achane maybe to get in there to counteract your Mostert. It's going to be one or the other. If there's a 2-touchdown score, let's be honest. I think those are the guys. Pacheco is a solid case for 2, I think, as well, to be honest there. And if I had to take a shot on a couple in this Browns-Texans game, give me Cooper, because he did it before against the Texans for sure. And then Nico. How do you not love Nico Collins?
Right.
All right, your best bets real quick, Dave. What do you got?
All right, best bets. We're going to go over with the Browns and Texans. We're going to go under with the Dolphins Chiefs. Another under there with the Steelers Bills. Give me the Packers with the points. Over Rams and Lions, and the outright upset. Let's go Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
If I need to have a best bet on the board for each one, and I'll go over in the Browns and Texans, under in the Miami, Kansas City, under Pittsburgh and Buffalo. I'll go over Packers, Cowboys. I'll take the Lions on the money line, minus 164, and then go ahead and give me the over in the Tampa Bay Philadelphia game as well. Any real quick props for me? The best ones that stick in my mind are I like the Tua under passing yards. When I got a higher earlier in the week, I liked it a lot better. I think it's a green light for Flacco and Stroud stuff. Give me the passing stuff for the Green Bay Cowboys, Dak and Jordan Love, and any of the receivers you want, to be honest, on Green Bay. Have fun with that. Jahmyr Gibbs, I really like in the Detroit game, and Puka as well. And then I do like Evans and Swift in the Monday night game for their stuff as well. All right, Dave, let's get to some NHL. I got to get Dave Del Grande on here, so we don't have as much time as I thought we were going to. But let's go through the slate real quick, and I'll just reel off the games. 1 o'clock, the Rangers are at the Caps. 4 o'clock, the Sharks are at the Senators. 4 o'clock, the Canucks are at the Sabres. The Devils and the Panthers at 6 p.m. Eastern. The Kings and Red Wings at 7 o'clock Eastern. A lot of 7 o'clock games on the slate. Avalanche at the Maple Leafs, good game. Ducks and the Lightning. Penguins and Hurricanes, good game. Flyers and the Jets. Edmonton at Montreal. Seattle and Columbus, a ton of 7 o'clock games right there. 8 o'clock, a good quartet of games as well, with the Bruins and the Blues, Coyotes Wild, Dallas at Chicago, the Islanders and the Predators, Calgary and the Golden Knights round out the night at 10 o'clock in the NHL. So, Dave, what are the few things you might be looking at today?
So one thing that pops out to me for sure, Vancouver at Buffalo. Believe it or not, Steve, where Vancouver was just not very good last year, they are one of the top teams in the league, if not the top. I'd have to double check on the standings, but they are on
fire, Steve, and they have been scoring a lot of goals. They got bogged down the other night in Pittsburgh, but they ended up winning that game. And when I say bogged down, I think they scored 4, but the fourth one came in overtime. So you got to think that's 3 regulation. I like Vancouver to light up Buffalo there, Steve. The Devils and the Panthers could play to an over as well. I definitely think that with the Avalanche and the Maple Leafs. Leafs score a lot of goals. Colorado, their usual selves, top-tier team. They can score right along with them. 6.5 in that game. Like the Oilers in Montreal, they had a little bit of a letdown game. I had some stuff going on with them the other night, and they kind of let me down. They ended up winning that game. I took over 4.5 when it was 0-0 after the first period. That game went 0-0 till about 5 minutes left. I was thinking to myself, that's terrible. That's awful. Well, that game ended up 5-2 or 3-2 in overtime in the favor of the Oilers. So that just kind of shows you how quickly things can change. You're talking, you need 4.5 goals, and you have 0 with 5 or 6 minutes left in the third period, and then all of a sudden the game ends in the over. So things can change very, very quickly in hockey, Steve. That's what I'm getting at there. I love the Kings over Detroit. LA are the road warriors at this point in the NHL. Really, really good road record. Really good road team. One of my top teams to go all the way this year. So I like them over Detroit. I kind of like the over in the Anaheim-Tampa game as well. Anaheim had a big part to do with killing a very nice ticket of mine the other night, but they scored a lot of goals doing it, so I'm taking note of that. Tampa, we know that they have the personnel to score a lot of goals, so I would take a look at the over there. Figure Pittsburgh and Carolina to be a pretty good one. Pittsburgh almost always at this point is playing over games. They score a lot of goals, but Steve, boy, people just score all over them. Their defense is very bad right now. Look for Seattle to take care of Columbus probably pretty handily. They are absolutely on fire. Probably the league's hottest team at this point. Other than that, Steve, some good ones at night. Figure Dallas takes care of Chicago pretty nicely. Watch out for the Boston Bruins and St. Louis Blues. St. Louis has been playing spoiler quite a bit here lately, I've seen. Other than that, Steve, we'll take a look at it, throughout the day. Pretty excited for this slate, man. There's a lot of hockey on today where I know everybody's focus is on the NFL playoffs, and probably for good reason. But don't forget, Saturdays, there's always a good slate for hockey, and, it's always enjoyable watching. So, I don't know, Steve, what are you thinking, and how's your hockey world shaping up so far?
Well, I haven't been playing, and that's probably a good thing. Just looking at these streaks, Dave, I mean, listen to all of this going on. This is nothing. The Bruins have lost 3 in a row. The Florida Panthers have won 9 in a row, 9-1 in their last 10. The Ottawa Senators have lost 5 games in a row. The Rangers have lost 3 in a row. The Carolina Hurricanes are 7-1-2 in their last 10. That's it for the East. Let's get to the West. Winnipeg have won 8 in a row, 9-0-1 in their last 10. And the last team to score 3 goals against them or more was back in early November. So they haven't given up more than 3 goals since early November. Think about that for Winnipeg. Colorado is 8-1-1 in their last 10. Minnesota Wild have lost 3 in a row. The Blackhawks 2-7-1 in their last 10. Vancouver have won 4 in a row, 7-2-1 in their last 10. The Kings losers of 7 in a row. The Edmonton Oilers, winners of 9 in a row, 9-1 in their last 10. Seattle, winners of 8 in a row.
On fire.
Anaheim, 2-7-1 in their last 10. San Jose, 1-9-1 in their last 10. San Jose have scored only 84 goals, which is by far the least amount. Next up on the list are the Capitals at 95 and the Blackhawks. What does that say about the Capitals? And San Jose have allowed 173 goals, a whopping minus 89 on the goal differential.
That's incredible.
Chicago's a minus 59. Columbus minus 29. Caps minus 26. It gets better in the Atlantic, actually. Montreal somehow in 6th, not 8th in the Atlantic, had the worst goal differential by far there at minus 28. It's a miracle they're even at 6th. But man, what a lot of streaks going on there, Dave. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's All-Star break is not far away, and it's some wild times in the NHL, so it's some fun action to get in on.
If it were me, and I had a great one last week, it was a walk when we talked about hockey, the last Saturday show we had, I think a couple of weeks ago. It was the Avalanche and the Panthers to go over, and I think that game was 8-5 or something like that. So they went flying over, whatever that final score was. But if I were to pick one tonight, man, I think that's a good game with Carolina and Pittsburgh. I would take a look at Winnipeg again at home, probably on a all line. They're able to hold up teams from scoring. Let's see, the Bruins, the Flyers.
I would throw Vancouver in there too, Steve.
Flyers have scored 124 goals, which is about mid-range. Nothing super great. It's probably more than they expected to score, to be honest. Winnipeg have scored 139, and they've only given up 95, which is by far the best. The second closest team to Winnipeg, giving up goals. Well, actually, the Kings at 97. Not bad at all. That's pretty good. But after that is Edmonton. Haven't Edmonton turned into such a defensive juggernaut all of a sudden here lately? Just 116 goals allowed for them. Seattle as well. Both of those teams improving 118. Philadelphia is not too bad at 118. So maybe I don't like Winnipeg on a puck line. Maybe take them on in regulation more than anything. Let's see here. If I had a pick of the day, though, I guess go ahead and give me, I don't know. I'm going to have to look at some team goals. Edmonton on a team goal. Maybe an over in this Colorado-Toronto game, 6.5. You'll probably take a look at that. Florida, New Jersey could be an interesting game as well.
Could be.
That could be a good game. Take the Rangers to beat the Capitals. How about that?
Yeah.
That would be my bet of the day. Rangers over Caps. Minus 152 for the Rangers to win in regulation on the 60-minute three-way line. We are at even money plus 100. So there you go. That's my pick of the day in NHL, Dave. Rangers at plus 100. All right. So that'll do it for me and Nephew Dave at this point. We'll go ahead and do a commercial. I'll re-cue it up here. We'll get our man, Mr. Dave Del Grande, in here. Let me get his slide ready to go. We'll remove Mr. Athen. Nephew Dave, I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go ahead and take a commercial break. We'll get back with the NFL slate. Take two, Dave Del Grande, live from Castro Valley, California, right after this message. We'll be right back.
flashing the red lights. I wanna see the college have some fun with lights. To the free show, never know what's going on. Just happy to exist. Traffic seats on the subway, cars riding in their pants. Always free to waste the time.
It's like we're back in the studio. Los Angeles, 1997. Brett Gurwitz behind the controls. This is Brett.
I don't need to tell the truth, but I never lie. I don't need to bow to you. You're just passing by. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I come back to you. Get inside my troubled mind with all of your threats. Sometimes I think I was blind. Not before we met. I never wanted to be the one that you depend on for your life. When you cry, it smells like soup. Sound like Shonen knife. Never fear about what I said all night. I gotta ride. Each time I stayed all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all night. You're an evil little girl. I'm a twisted man, tearing through your perfect world. Make you understand. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I come back to you and do the things you do. Stay all night. I gotta ride. Each time I stay all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all. I would never treat you bad. You deserve the best from me. If you want to keep your place, you better get down on yours.
Yeah, Todd wrote this one.
Yeah.
You think? This is not mine.
Stand all night, I gotta ride. Each time I stand all night, no, I just might. You make me stand all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stand all night. I'm gonna stand all.
All right, Todd.
Get on your feet. Now time is over with the quickness. Can I get a witness like Jehovah? Amen. Keep it up till I say when. Now I'm busting up the playpen. It's the era of Jake Rivera. Sparking revolutions like in one ton of error. Like Pharaoh getting plagued from the hands of the creator. Locust devouring all the hocus pocus. Focus on the most that the curious unload. Contents under pressure. About to explode like the Farino. Mean and green, so check my signal. It's the skinny individual who did you well. I kid you not. I think you stop if you got to scheme. Cause my team bring the steam like I wonder from an oasis. And the race is right. Now it's time to take my place in the sun. You can't deny the force. 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 You can't deny the force.
Resistance is futile. We got momentum approval. Invent the doctor dances cause our views get futile. It's brutal. So expect the pen speed. And let the ball symbols all suspended sense.
Self-suppression of evidence will be met with belligerence.
And you can hesitate medicines like the president's hands. Your confession is expected if you think they were presenting in a method. Yes, you guess it.
Blessed are we who come in the name of J.
Our it spreads like
Oh, I declare.
it's a state of emergency, the president has said. So don't expect no clemency, depend on me, my vanity. It's a done for giving,
You can't resist the skin.
so give yourself a move and it's still feel the war emotional, you see.
Cross the force cautiously. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force. You can't deny the force.
No, you can't.
You can't deny the force.
With us now from Castro Valley, California, he is with Field Level Media, a senior analyst at Stack Factor, and he is Mr. Fantasy himself. We were talking about our usual guest who comes on every week. As the crowd cheers, they're celebrating. They are in awe of the fantasy champion himself. He's been coming on, giving great fantasy advice all season long, and he crowns that with a victory in his league last week. Dave Del Grande, the man. What's going on, Dave? How are you today?
Oh, still celebrating.
How long does that celebration go on for in your locker room there?
Well, what's interesting is, when I have success like this, which, happens my fair share of time, I want the next league to start. I was like, when's the next draft? How am I ranking guys for next year? I've already been talking to some people. Where do you think this guy goes next year? Where do you think this guy goes? And of course, it's all foolish. Well, where's Marvin Harrison going to end up next year? Who's going to have new quarterbacks? We've already seen some new coaches go into place, but so many teams are looking for coaches and who their coordinators are going to be. So there's just a lot of uncertainty. So it's, I don't know, maybe I just have no life. I've got nothing better to talk about. But basically, all this talk about fantasy next year is just, a complete waste of time. But you know what? That's okay. It reminds me of the success I had this year. Very, very lucky, I will admit. But I've taken chances on guys in years past, and usually they blow up on me. And this year, the 4 or 5 guys where I said, you know what, if this guy stays healthy, he's going to have a good year. They all stayed healthy for some reason. And, I wish I could save a couple of them for next year.
Yeah, and so much so. And you made that big trade for Justin Jefferson, trading off some nice pieces on your roster to an injured Jefferson who did not come back for several weeks, but that move paid off in the end, right?
It certainly did. I mean, the two things, I'm kind of most proud about, and again, these things blow up in your face as often as they come through for you. But as I looked at my team and I thought, I got a pretty good team here as I was drafting, I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on Jonathan Taylor. And who knows what's going to happen with him. Remember him at the beginning of the season, he wasn't even playing. Were they going to trade him? Or where do you draft him? I thought, you know what, if he lands, I figured he was going to be traded, right? If he lands in the right place by the end of the season, he could be an elite back. He could help me in the playoffs. And the same with Jefferson. And the way it worked out is, not only, when Taylor came back from his suspension, I already had McCaffrey. So that gave me 2 good running backs. I had Rashawn White, who was a real nice third back. So I had Mostert and Swift. And at the time, they were like the numbers 2 and 3 running backs in the whole fantasy league. But it's like, I'm tired of trying to pick one and picking the wrong one. You know what? I just traded them both, thinking, if I can get Justin Jefferson, who was injured at the time, but if he's healthy come playoff time for me, and Taylor's healthy for me, with McCaffrey, with A.J. Brown, with Keenan Allen, who, of course, got hurt anyway, man, I could have a real monster team by the end of the year. And you cross your fingers, and Justin Jefferson was, in my mind, very questionable. Didn't have great success due mostly to the quarterback situation there until the very, very end. Jonathan Taylor was decent, mediocre, I would say, until the very, very end. I mean, you talk about two guys who came through under the bright lights the very last week of the season. When McCaffrey was sitting out for me, when, I didn't have Andrews, I didn't have Keenan Allen, that last week, it's all a toss up. And man, for Jefferson and Taylor, just to be superstars in that last week of the season when I needed them to be, this is why I rolled the dice on these two guys, and it paid off.
Well, the overspill as well is trickling down onto this program with all that wonderful fantasy knowledge and everything that you've been able to put out with us prop wise. So we shall continue to do that this week with Wild Card Weekend. But I think we played this game last year at one point. I'll do it again right now just because we have and I probably did it because of all the coaches who became available. And I think you can even say in our lifetime, I don't think we've ever seen anything with the magnitude of the coaches' star power or win power combined of all the coaches that were released this week. But let's play this game. The great Roger Goodell comes to Mr. Dave Del Grande and says, "You're going to be the GM of the New Mexico City team. We're going to start next year. There's a bunch of coaches out there available. We know that there's going to be some more firings here in the playoffs. Other organizations are going to vie for some coaches that we're not even thinking about probably at this moment in time. But he's going to give you one coach for your team. You could go to college. You could go to the pros, however you want to do it. And that you're also going to get the pick of the whatever quarterback that you want as well. So you get a coach and a quarterback for your Mexico City team. Who would you like to see pair up together to give your team a good run for next year?"
Well, the way the game is played these days, you've got to have an offensive-minded coach. I mean, just look at what Miami has been able to do by, playing a different style than other teams. I mean, Miami captured the imagination of the league this year, until, they had some injuries later on in the year. Who knows what kind of state they're in right now. But Houston is a team where, because of the new quarterback there, because of the wide receivers, they're a team that, wow, they could be really exciting moving forward. It's all about the offensive game now, and that being the case, I wouldn't want Bill Belichick as my coach. I wouldn't even want Pete Carroll as my coach, even though these are two of the greatest coaches, Belichick maybe of all time, Carroll certainly of, recently. I wouldn't go in that direction. I would look to college football, or I would look for a coordinator, an offensive coordinator from the NFL to come in and run the show for me. I think we're seeing a lot of concepts from college football coming into the NFL now. They're more accepted. Spread the field out, run wide receivers on sweeps, just do a lot of crazy things, throw the ball on every down. And I think that's the way you got to play. I don't, who's the guy that you want from college football? I don't know that much about college football. I just know that, you watch the Big 12 conference, and every game is 40-30. So obviously some people know something about offense. Maybe Steve Sarkisian is the guy. He's certainly done wonders with Texas. They seem to score 40 points every game they play. He does have some pro experience. I would look for a guy like that. And then a quarterback, there's going to be a lot of talk, obviously, going into the draft this year. But the Chicago Bears, obviously catch a huge break, getting the number 1 pick, from Carolina this year.
Right.
But not only that, they get it in a year where there's a real number 1 talent. If they had this number 1 pick last year, it wouldn't be worth 25% of what it's worth this year, because Caleb Williams comes into the league as someone who's already being compared with Mahomes. And imagine if that's true. Imagine if he comes in and he is, a similar talent to Mahomes. Man, Mexico City is going to make the playoffs within a couple of years. You put him with a offensive-minded, maybe even it's the USC coach, comes along with him. And I certainly didn't have any problem scoring points this year. That's I'd love to have him on my my expansion franchise. I'd love to start with him at quarterback, and some young offensive-minded coach with him.
Okay, we had the 2 weather games in the wild card. We talked about the opportunity scale, 1 to 10, 10 being lots of opportunity, 1 being very minimal this week. You throw the weather games in here as well. We have 6 games to choose from. Where does your opportunity meter ring out at before we get into this topic of all the games?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. The sites where you would expect bad weather appear to have bad weather, and the sites that are indoors or in Florida, expect to have good weather. So, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to me that if you got to look at the game at Dallas, you got to look at the game at Detroit as games that should be very, very high scoring. And then you look at the games at Buffalo, certainly, and even at Kansas City with what you would consider to be 2, good offensive teams. I can't imagine those games being, high scoring at all. I mean, it could be very, very low scoring, both of those games. And, then you've got the others in between. You've got the game at Houston and the game at Tampa where the weather shouldn't be a factor, but those games are weird, especially the Cleveland-Houston game. I don't expect a whole lot of scoring in that game, but for a different reason. So to answer your question, to me, there's green light special on the Packers and Cowboys and the Rams and Lions, and a red light stay away from, on the Dolphins and Chiefs and Steelers and Bills.
Okay, so let's go through it chronologically then, because you said you expect lower points in this game with the Cleveland Browns and the Texans, and the general consensus is, at what I've been looking at, is that it is trending to be an over game. The public likes it over. The bets are coming in as the over. I mean, I like the over too, just because of what Flacco has been able to do. I get it. Here's a storyline, old man against the young buck. But we talked about having to run the game here in the playoff, running the ball here in the playoffs as well. So I'm imagining that's going to kind of factor into what you may have to say here. But go ahead and state your case for the under then in this game with the Texans and the Browns.
Well, you've got 2 teams with no playoff experience. And it's nice that both of these teams got to this point. But why did they get to this point? Houston got to this point because they, as I mentioned a minute ago, Stroud has come in, breathed life into the passing game there. They have at one point, as good a depth of receiving core as there is in the league. But that depth is gone. There's no Tank Dell anymore. There's no Noah Brown anymore. They've basically got one, NFL level receiver. And why are and they played in the weakest division in football. So this is, to me, a very, the team doesn't belong in the playoffs. And then you look at Cleveland, who benefited, again, from maybe the strongest division in football, but the Bengals lose their quarterback. The Steelers don't have a good season, and then Baltimore separates themselves from the field. But Cleveland loses their quarterback. Cleveland loses their running back, and they're winning a lot on defense, a lot on bad weather, So, and again, I think Flacco could be the difference in this game as the more steady quarterback facing by far the weaker of the two defenses in this game. But I just don't see, I see Stroud making a lot of mistakes, rookie mistakes under the bright lights, first time in the playoffs, without a legitimate receiving core, without a good running back. I don't see how Houston scores points in this game. Cleveland, has the quarterback that's not going to make mistakes. Cleveland clearly is not a good offensive team, but if they don't make mistakes and they just, use up the clock, throw the ball short, as the Flacco game plan, punt the ball away, and let Stroud throw the ball to the Cleveland defense or get sacked and fumble the ball away. I think that's going to be. I think the Cleveland defense is by far the best unit on the field in this game. And like I said, as important as anything else is, you wouldn't expect either one of these teams, especially Houston, to play their best game this week in their playoff debut. Last week they had, in essence, a playoff game against the Colts. That was a terrible game. The Colts are a bad team, and they almost won
not
that
for us.
game.
We called out the under. It was a good game for both.
Oh yeah,
us.
exactly. And this game, you're facing a defense that's way better than what you faced last week.
Yes,
you
good
couldn't
point,
move
good
the
point.
ball on them. So I just think that playoff experience means something, and one thing you learn when you play in the playoffs is don't make, in a game where you've got a chance, and certainly Houston has a chance in this game, you can't be the one that makes the big mistake. And they are, in my mind, far more likely to make that big mistake this week than Cleveland is.
Okay, if the Browns win this game, it's because who has the biggest game personnel-wise? I would say it's Amari Cooper again from what he did last week or last time against the Texans.
You're talking about offense.
Yes,
if they win this game, it's going to be because of defense. But
right.
No, to me, who's going to be the offensive standout in this game? I would go with Riley Patterson. I think that Cleveland's going to be able to move the ball effectively enough to get field goal opportunities. I think that's going to be the difference in this game. This game, we're looking at 19-13, 16-10, something very low scoring, but with a lot of field goals. I think Cleveland can, because they have better, overall weapons in their offense and a quarterback who's a chain mover. I think they can move the ball between the 30s effectively, get Patterson field goal opportunities, have him make 2, 3, even 4 field goals in this game. I think he's going to be the offensive player of the game.
All right, over 7.5 points for Riley Patterson. All right, is he potentially your non-greedy?
Well,
I don't want to throw him on any ticket. Put him on a
me,
consideration list.
I would. Does he have a minus 1.5 field goals? Does he have that kind of line too?
No. Just his point total of 7.5.
Well, I do think he's going to make at least 2 field goals, but that only gets you to 6. You're still you need a third field goal or 2 touchdowns on top of that.
I got one you'll like. How about this? Texans total points under 21.5.
That to me sounds very, very reasonable. And again, to me, what do I think is going to happen in this game? I think the three things that are most likely are Cleveland field goals, Texans turnovers, and Cleveland sacks. I take that back. Let me give you a third one rather than sacks, because it kind of goes hand in hand with that. I think Stroud's going to have to run the ball in order to be effective in this game. There's been several quarterbacks who have actually run the ball well against Cleveland because of their pass rush. Forces you. I mean, you think of it this way: you're back to pass, you get sacked. At 2nd and 18, they drop their linebackers deep. It'll drop.
Right.
He's back to pass again. He's under pressure again. And Stroud's not a guy. We've talked about this before. He's not a running quarterback. He's not a play action, fake it and run it himself. But he is mobile, and he is someone who, on 2nd and 18, hopefully is smart enough not to throw the ball into triple coverage, but rather run for 9 yards and slide. You do that a couple of times.
It's the playoffs, too. You lay your body on the line a little bit in the playoffs.
Right, exactly. And I think, they don't have a running game.
He had that last week is over.
Yeah, right. And his rushing total last week line was really low.
Right.
6.5.
I had it. He went over.
What is it this week?
11.5 this week.
11.5. I mean, to me, that's 2 scrambles.
Right.
I think he makes that easily. And if you look at the, Cleveland's history this year against quarterbacks, a lot of them have run the ball a lot. And it's not guys who are runners. They've played Lamar Jackson twice. He's a runner. Now, granted, he had like 17 runs against Cleveland. I mean, so again, that tells you something, that they think the quarterback's going to be able to scramble and run the ball. But there's other quarterbacks routine, and I don't have the names in front of me, but 5 or 6 runs a game. If Stroud pulls the ball down and runs even 3 times, he goes over that number. I think that's so. Like I said, what do I like in this game? I like Riley Patterson's field goals. I like Cleveland getting turnovers, and maybe best of all, I like Stroud's rushing total.
Stroud over 11.5 at -120. I can't parlay sacks to this, and turnovers. We have to have. Well, I have the interception prop. I don't have we should have a total turnovers alternate number. That would be fun if they did, but we don't have it.
Since I don't, I would take the over 1.5 field goals for Patterson. Apparently, that's not available. I don't really like the 7.5 because, like I said, that's 2 field goals, which I think he's going to get. But then that's also 2 extra points, and I'm not sure they score 2 touchdowns in this game. And so it's going to require a 3rd field goal just to get over that number. I'd like to get 4 or 5 to 1 on 3 field goals. You're paying me even money for it. I'm going to my play in this game thus is going to be Stroud over 11.5 yards.
Okay, so I'm going to put him on the side in case we use that here after process of elimination. CJ Stroud over rushing yards 11.5. Now I won't put this together, but I will just say, since we talked about it, you could do Stroud over 11.5 and under 21.5 Texans points at plus 225 would be your payout for that. All right, let's get to the next game. Cold weather game. And I know it hurts. When I go out in 15 degrees, I'm like, it's not cold. This is like physically hurting my skin. I want to go inside. Ticket prices are down for this. We actually had my man Nick Athan from War Paint Illustrated, my former boss from the mid-2000s when you were first on my show way back in the day, Dave Del Grande. He was on earlier in Kansas City, and yes, it is bitter. It is bad. He doesn't think wins is necessarily an issue at times in Arrowhead, especially for the kicker, Butker, for the Chiefs. But the only path of victory that I see here, mainly for either team, I think Kansas City can get right a little bit in the passing game for sure because of the Dolphins' injuries. But Miami, I think, does have a path to victory since they have the good running backs if they can get off. Kind of frustrate Mahomes, keep him on the sideline, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, on the flip side, you see how hard Pacheco runs. You see it physically on TV how hard this guy runs. I mean, he has to be the first thing that comes to mind when it comes to this kind of weather against the banged up Dolphins defense. And for that reason alone, I definitely like the running backs a little bit to get their opportunities more so than through the air. I mean, you're going to have to be bundled up a little bit more. That might slow you down a hair. The Chiefs do have back end speed. They do have one of the better speed secondaries in the NFL. Not saying that they can keep up with Tyreek Hill because that's hard to ask anyone to do for. But I do see a path to victory with the Dolphins if they can stay real consistent to the run and then hit that play action fake maybe once the Chiefs try to load up the box a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera. I think Pacheco gets a dose as well. All that being said, I think the clock does run a lot, and I think this is an under game, 43.5. I think it's just way too high here. It's going to be cold. It's going to be bad. But what are your thoughts on this game? I expect low points. What do you got?
Well, two things that I think are very important at this stage of the season. One I talked about in the previous game, and that's playoff experience. The other one, which I think is a huge factor this week, is public perception. And I mean, so you've got a lot more people watching these games than have watched the NFL all year. And if you haven't watched the NFL all year, maybe you just caught a couple of headlines or a couple of clips. You know, what do you think about these teams that are playing this week? Well, you probably think Kansas City and Philadelphia, they got to be the top two teams in the league this year, right? I mean, you know, they made the Super Bowl last year. They're back this year. I can't wait to lay my money on those two. The problem is those two teams have been terrible this year. Terrible, right? And the money is going to them. Why? Kansas City, you know, they won't win this game. They haven't won this kind of game all year. Philadelphia's not going to win their game. Philadelphia's been like the worst team in the league, and they can't beat the Giants, the Redskins, down the stretch. I mean, they're favored on the road. Kansas City's line has gone up, up over a field goal. And no. Well, who thinks that Kansas City and Philadelphia are going to be able to flip this magic switch and revert back to what they were last year? I just don't get it. But then again, like I said, you think about it, these aren't the sharpest people who are betting this money. These are people who are new to the game and don't really know that these two teams are not the same two teams they were last year. Now,
I haven't been on Kansas City once all year, to be honest. So
yeah, right, and you were way ahead of me on this. I thought the Kansas City, because of their defense, was we're still going to be really good, but for a different reason. But their offense has been so bad that yes, Miami's got a ton of injuries on defense. Has it really mattered?
Right.
When Kansas City's throwing the ball to the receivers who can't catch. Miami, right? They played Kansas City earlier this year. Am I correct about that?
Yep.
I want to say yes, and I want to say in that game, Kansas City knows Tyreek Hill better than anybody. If anybody's going to slow Tyreek Hill down, it's going to be Kansas City. And they did a good job against him that first game. Miami did a good job against Kelsey that first game. You've got to stop those two guys, and I think both of these teams can do that. So what does that leave you with? I think, Miami, they've had a lot of injuries. Waddle's been out. Mostert's been out. Achane's been out. Even Hill's been out. But it sounds like they're all back. And if so, they have way too many weapons for Kansas City's defense. I think Waddle could have a really big game because, you've got to be, wary of the Miami running game. Mostert had a real nice game against them the first time. Achane is even a better running back. And you're focusing your attention on stopping Hill. You've got to do that. So I think Waddle could be the difference maker in this game. I think Miami's going to win this game. They're not, people say, they haven't beaten anybody all season. Well, they've had a tough schedule. I mean, the last 3 weeks, while they've been losing and, lost the division title, they played Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo. I mean, aren't those three of the top 5 teams in the league? They beat Dallas. Heck, they could have won this game last week against Buffalo. It was a real close game. They had half their team out. So I think Miami comes into this game underrated. I think Kansas City goes into this game overrated. And then you've got the weather factor. I mean, the weather factor is going to keep this game from being a real shootout. I think that, Miami needs to, they can't come out like they have in a couple of their games this year and give up touchdowns on the first 2 drives and fall behind and, become an entirely passing team, because they do have a good running game. I think the weather will help keep the score down, will help keep this game close. And where one big play could make a difference. And I just think that Miami has way more options, to make that big play than Kansas City does.
Okay. Overall, would your main bet then be just the outright Miami Dolphins money line plus 190?
Well, what fun is that? I think that I'd take Waddle.
Okay.
I'd do something with Waddle. I'd look at his yardage in this game.
48 and a half. Yeah, you're going to like that number.
Yeah. I mean, that because you're going to see in this game a lot of, especially from Miami, those short crossing patterns that Tyreek Hill catches it, and next thing you know, he's gone for 80 yards. Well, Waddle has that same potential. And, I mean, he's someone who, if he only catches 5 balls this game, one of them is going to go for 35 yards. And if that's the case, then you're going to be easily over that total. I'd stay away from touchdown scorers in this game just because there's, on Miami side, there's too many options. Miami, if they only score 2 touchdowns in this game, maybe 3, well, they've got at least 4 guys who have to factor into, could it be Hill? Could it be Waddle? Could it be Achane? Could it be Mostert? Sure. It could be any of those guys. And, any of them could score 2. So I don't necessarily want touchdown scorers. I'll take the yardage with Waddle, and I'll make that my my play for this game.
You got to think McDaniel is going to come out with a few tricks up his sleeve as well, which could be some kind of inside little lateral pat that counts as a pass / handoff type of deal. He does that kind of stuff all the time with these guys.
Yeah, and certainly Kansas City does that as well. I mean, I think you're going to see that in this game because regardless of what your colleague there says about the wind, it is, and you talked about, what 15 degrees feels like or whatever. I went out yesterday morning to bring my garbage cans in. Oh my God, I almost froze to death. It was 51 degrees. Not 1.5, 5.1. And like, oh my God, I ran back inside and, I let my wife bring the garbage cans in. I just think the weather is going to be a huge factor in this game. And so you're going to have to try to run the ball, which I think both teams will try, and throw the ball short. And, Kansas City is going to be all over Hill. Miami's going to be all over Kelsey. Who's going to be the guy who catches a short ball and makes something happen? I think Waddle is easily the guy that you would pinpoint there as that guy.
All right, we kind of talked about it a second ago. We're kind of leading into it. I want to follow up on it. So long shot, if I want to get greedy on a low-hanging number. Well,
what do you mean if?
Yeah, win. So Mecole Hardman is only at 13.5 for his baseline. But if he catches one of his little end-around, inside handoff dealios or whatever, 40-plus yards is at plus 550. If I'm taking a greed shot in the dark, could you get on board with anything Mecole Hardman?
Well, yes. I think that, to me, the biggest question mark in this game is the health of the Miami defense. While it appears, and no sure things here, but it appears Waddle and Achane and Mostert and Hill, it appears they're all going to play. Defense is not nearly in that good a shape. Last I saw, they had 3 defensive backs probably out. They've lost 4 linebackers this year. They're in really bad shape from the linebacker line on back. So yes, you would think that the potential is there for some, one of Kansas City's speedy guys, to catch a short pass, bust through even a broken coverage or backup cornerback or whatever it is. So I think that's a nice risk to take. Certainly, pick the guy of your choice and hope, he's the guy that catches along, because the Kansas City, I don't care what the weather's like. Kansas City's going to try to get the ball downfield. As bad as Kansas City's receivers are, I'm not sure Miami's defensive backfield is in any better shape than Kansas City's wide receivers are. So I think the potential is there for some big plays for Kansas City.
Same game parlay style. If I'm looking for some sneaky receiver yards, I have Waddle over 48.5. Maybe I throw a Hardman in there at 13.5. And if I'm looking for a third random one, Achane at just over 16.5 kind of sticks out to me as well a little bit. But that's almost 6-1 odds for those 3 together.
Yeah, I do. Again, the worse the weather, the more you would think they would rely on throwing the ball to their backs. Kansas City obviously has McKinnon, who's we've seen him in the playoffs. As the weather's gotten colder last year, he seemed to have better games. They throw it to him out there standing all alone at the sideline after Mahomes runs around for 5 seconds. He catches it and he runs it for 20 yards. It's just, we've seen that kind of play a lot. And I think that's going to be a big factor in this game as well. That, if you've got 2 linebackers covering, or a linebacker and a safety covering Kelsey, you're not covering our back coming out of the backfield. And same thing, you got 2 guys guarding Hill. You're leaving something open in the short zone where a lot of teams would throw to their tight end, but Miami would be more likely to throw to their back. So I do see, as part of, I just think of the way Kansas City plays, 10 guys get on the stat sheet every game. So everybody's going to have an opportunity to do something. And when the numbers are really low, like you've talked about, where it's only going to take a catch or 2, to get over numbers, as you've talked about, they'll get that opportunity. They're going to throw the ball to Achane 2 or 3 times. And they're going to throw the ball to Hardman deep 2 or 3 times, So, you just catch one of them, break a tackle, and the number's so low, you've got a good shot. So, I say go for it.
All right, let's fast forward to the Monday game, because you were scolding the Eagles pretty badly there a minute ago, as they are 2.5-point favorites in 43 at Tampa Bay. And, hey, man, what can I say? Tampa Bay 9-0 winners last week over Carolina, which looks bad. But I think Tampa Bay is just kind of – I think they were just hoping to kind of get through. I think they're a little banged up is what I think. Just from the you can see it in Baker's eyes. He's kind of hobbling around back there. That being said, they are a veteran team. I think they're probably going to be better off this week at home. They've seen Philly before, which I think helps. Same case, a Monday night scenario. And that was week. Was that week 2, week 3?
Or 3, yeah.
Week
3, maybe.
Something like that. And once I saw DeAndre Swift in that game, I really thought we were going to see a really, really big season from him. Yet he somewhat kind of just disappeared and fell off the radar. I'm going to blame that on coaching a little bit, I believe, at the end of the day. But I'm wondering if they might not be enlightened enough to get Swift a little bit more involved here Monday night again, since he did have such good success against Tampa Bay before. And I think the Eagles secondary has turned out to be so bad that the veteran receivers and Baker are going to be good enough to get their plays on him as well. So where I agree with you, I think Philadelphia can have a hard time here. I think Swift might get his chances, but I could see Tampa Bay winning this game for sure. And I'm not so sure this game doesn't creep a little bit over 43 as well, too, just because of the nice weather factor. Philly does get up maybe scores in the teens, upper teens, lower 20s. Tampa Bay able to get mid-20s or even a little bit better. I'm going to expect a good game from Evans. He dropped a sure touchdown last week. I just don't think he's going to drop again on the bomb last week. I don't know if you saw that or not. Popped right in and out of his hands, wide open. Would have been an easy score from about 75 yards away. I think the Buccaneers can have success. I think this could be a little bit higher scoring game. Won't surprise me if it goes under as well. But I think Philadelphia does give at least a better effort, and I could see a scenario in which their coach doesn't have a job either at the end of this game. And then the coaching carousel really kind of gets thrown off kilter there. But anyway, you crapped on the Eagles a minute ago, so go ahead. What's your angle here in this game?
Well, I agree with what you said there. I mean, and it all starts with Philadelphia's defense, which is really, really bad. I mean, it's very hard. I mean, obviously they were very good early in the season, and then they played a murderer's row of teams. And you know what? And I don't have any problem with the fact that they struggled against the 49ers and the Cowboys in the rematch. They played Miami in there, and they even played Kansas City. And I mean, they played 5 or 6 straight games where it's like, they went to Seattle. It's like, oh my God, why throw a couple of these games earlier in the season when they were playing these terrible teams and they were beating them all. But if there was a time for them to flip the switch on, it was 3 weeks ago when they still had a chance to win the division. They still had a chance to have the number 1 seed in the playoffs. And you looked at their schedule, they're playing the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. I mean, you talk about a godsend. And oh my goodness, they might as well have been the Panthers. I mean, they were awful in those games. You can't. I mean, the Giants can't move the ball like that against you, and they did. And there's no reason to believe. And Arizona scored, 34 points or whatever against Philadelphia. And it's Tampa Bay, which has been, in my mind, very consistent. Like you said, they're a playoff-tested, veteran type of team. You're not going to rattle their quarterback. You're not going to rattle their receivers. They've got a dependable running back, when they need to use it. But I think they're going to throw, this is going to be a good, very good passing game for Tampa. I don't see any way Tampa doesn't score in the 20s in this game, probably upper 20s, maybe even in the 30s. The only way Philadelphia is going to win this game is if they have a, turn back the clock kind of game where they win 38-31. But A.J. Brown is out, this is not a team that has depth at wide receiver. Smith has been injured. He's kind of frail. He's not a number 1 receiver. I think there's a lot of pressure on Goddard this week to come up big. he's going to have to score 2 touchdowns in this game for them to be competitive. I also think, and I wouldn't underestimate him, I think Hurts is going to have to put the team on his back this week and say, you know what, I've been conservative all year. I need to run the ball 15 times this week, and go for a couple of touchdowns. And I'm not just talking about the 1-yard plunges. I think he's going to have to attempt to be the difference maker in this game. And while it's possible, again, it hasn't happened this year. And now you've got one less reason for the defense not to focus on you in the fact that Brown's not even there. So I think Tampa's going to win this game. I do agree that it's going to be high scoring. I do like the passing numbers for the usual suspects for Tampa, even the quarterback, but certainly for Godwin and for Evans. And I do think, the one thing that I feel most confident in this game is I think Hurts is going to have a big running game in this game. I think, try to keep, single-handedly try to keep Philly in it. And as opposed to, some of these other games that we've talked about, there's really no reason for this game not to be high scoring. And it's the only way Philly can possibly win this game. And you got to know Hurts goes into this game thinking it's on me. I'm the MVP of the league. I can be Lamar Jackson. I was last year. You watch what I do this week to Tampa Bay. Because, let's be honest, Tampa Bay is not the 49ers. They're not the Cowboys. They're not, some of these teams that Philadelphia has been playing. They're a notch below that. But that said, you would have said the same thing, even more so, about the Giants and about the Cardinals, and Philly couldn't get it done against them. So that's my I think Tampa's going to win, but I do think Hurts will be the individual star of this game.
I'll go over the numbers in a minute. So you said it again. You're like, I'm trying to think of ways Tampa can't win. So I actually asked myself that same question as I'm working, driving around, having these random thoughts of football in my head while still focusing on driving, but taking in my knowledge on my sportscast, whatever I'm investigating. So the way that the Buccaneers don't win or score points is this: they look like your grandma's Cadillac that you inherited. Man, she's pretty. It runs really good. You get that thing on the interstate. It's a nice, smooth ride. Everything looks to be fine, and then you pull down into the neighborhood, and that thing clunks out on you. That's just kind of the way Tampa Bay could go. The Panthers' performance last week, that's all.
Yeah, but there's a difference between playing a team that is going to have trouble scoring 10 points against you, rather than a game like this where Philly, they've got to go into this game thinking, you know what, Philly's problem is not their offense. Philly's problem is their defense. We're not going to win this game 17-14, short of the first snowstorm in Tampa Bay, history. And so they got to go into this game thinking, we got to come out aggressively. We're not going to run the ball. Let's not kid ourselves. We're not going to run the ball on this team. We don't have that kind of running game. But we do have better receivers than certainly the Giants and the Cardinals threw out there against these guys, and they couldn't stop the Cardinals' passing game, with their season on the line. So I think they'll come out throwing. I think they've got dependable receivers, proven playoff, proven receivers, and Evans and Godwin. I think both of them could go over 100 yards in this game. And Mayfield, for all his shortcomings, he has experience. You wouldn't expect him to throw this game away. I think it's I think Tampa has the incentive to come out in this game and try to put up as many points as possible, because that's how they're going to win it.
Baker Mayfield for 234.5 yards for his baseline. His alternate numbers for touchdowns: 2 touchdowns plus 104, 3 touchdowns plus 400. Looks to be attractive to me. Jalen Hurts 34.5 for his rushing yards. Evans is 68.5 for his passing. Godwin's 56.5 for his passing. Trey Palmer checks in at 24.5. Cade Otton, a low number, 23.5 for him. Rashad White, as always, a threat for receiving yards as well. 21.5 for him there. And
I think there's 3 outstanding plays there. I mean, the Hurts over the rushing total is to me number one. And another, kind of strategy that I've had in the past, and I'm not sure it's a good one or a bad one, but I've thrown it out there before. One of Tampa Bay's 2 receivers is going to have a big game. And so if you take them both over their passing total, you're going to win at least one of them. And so it's like a no risk thing. They're not going to both go under that passing total. Now, are they both going to go over that passing total? I think there's a good chance of that happening. So it's like, all right, well, I know I'm cashing at least one of them. I'm playing with the house's money. I'll take them both to the over. And just hope that in the end, it's not Evans catching, 11 for 130 and Godwin catching 5 for 28. And if that happens, well, you get your money back, and you still get your split out of it. But the combined total for those 2 guys, I wish that were an option. Take those 2 numbers, add them together. What were the numbers you gave me? 68.5, 56.5. So 125. Over or under for those 2 receivers. I take that over in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, you could parlay them together for sure, and get a plus number, and then
but there you put your your money at risk. Here in my mind, you're not putting your money at risk, because one of those 2 is going to go over at least. But that's how I'd rate them. I'd go Hurts over the rushing total, Evans over his passing total, and Godwin over his passing total. I think those are 3 very strong plays, but I'd put Hurts as my top one there.
Godwin for a touchdown at plus 220 is not the worst number in the world either, I would say. Evans is minus 105 if you played it one for each. They both could score, to be honest.
Absolutely.
They both.
Again, it's kind of the same thinking, except in this case, you play them both to score a touchdown, and if it's Evans who gets it, you get your money back. If it's Godwin who gets it, you actually, make money off of it. So it's, and this is going to be I think this is going to be a game where Tampa scores at least 3 touchdowns, and they're not Mayfield's not going to score most likely, and White, who I know him very well from my fantasy team, and he had a great season for me. It wasn't because he scored a lot of rushing touchdowns, and so these touchdowns are going to come from their wideouts probably. I think both of those are worth considering as well. I don't think you can go wrong taking Evans or Godwin or both of them for yardage and for TDs.
The last thing on this, I think it actually helps Todd Bowles here since they've seen this team before. I mean, they have a little bit of a playbook on them. They're going to kind of, even without A.J. Brown now, they kind of know what to focus in on a little bit more here. And out of all of the coach of the year talk at any point, and it's just because Tampa was sitting around 500, but there are plenty of coaches in that coach of the year discussion with similar records. But I mean, Todd Bowles really has done as good of a job as anyone, really, to be honest. That's all I had to say about that.
Well, this comes with the territory. You could make a case for 10 different coaches this year for having done a really good job. But the reason for that was because everybody won 8 games. Everybody won 8 or 9 games. And these teams that were, wow, this is a 5-win team. Houston, this is a 5-win team. How did they win 9 games? Well, because everybody did this year. You didn't have the team going. You had Baltimore in one conference, you had 49ers in the other conference. Having dominant records, but they weren't 16-1 or 15-2. Even they lost their handful of games, and you still had bad teams in the league. So the middle of the – just look at the playoff scenarios the last couple of weeks. How many teams were still in it? And the fact that we were talking about the Falcons, the Colts, the Texans, teams like that were still in it. The Steelers. How in the world did the Steelers make the playoffs? That all these teams were still in, and when it was like, oh my God, this is the Steelers might be the worst playoff team, in recent memory. But how did they get in? But this, the credit the coach, and credit the Houston coach, and credit the Tampa. So there's just so many of these guys who you think did a really good job, but I'm not so sure it wasn't. Just the fact that everybody, it's like I just ran a mile, my fastest time ever. I ran a 3:59, the fastest mile ever. Yeah, but you finished in last place, and 7 other guys all broke 4 minutes too. What did you guys run? 1,500 yards, and so I stick with Shanahan and as the coach of the year this year.
All right, Pittsburgh Steelers and Bills. All right, 9.5, 33.5. A lot of support coming in on Pittsburgh on this one. There was talk of trying to maybe move this game to Cleveland, but it looks like they've decided against that officially. You could move the game this late if you wanted to, I don't think. So Bills here. Josh Allen, they've kind of been there, done that. I don't think the Steelers are going to trick you. I think you know what you're going to get. Najee Harris and some Jalen Warren for the most part, and they're going to try to nickel and dime you to death and do so through the ground game. Winds, cold weather, maybe even snow in this game as well. Maybe James Cook, who's had some fumble issues, gets a little bit of a load here himself. But generally just a game we want to run away from. This kind of screams, just the way you look at it, is kind of how you're going to get it, I think. Just a lower scoring game. Do you think the same thing?
Absolutely. You talk. You want to you want to go a greedy ticket. Pick 3-0 as the final score of the game. The thing about the Steelers are a little bit like the Dolphins in the sense that they have 2 good running backs. They've got 2 good wideouts. They've got even a dependable tight end that Miami doesn't have. They have the weapons to move the ball. I don't want to say effectively, but consistently. They're not a team that they're so bad on offense. It's going to be a lot of 3 and outs in this terrible weather. They'll find, with their line, their coach, their mentality, they'll find a way to grind out those 2 first downs that get the ball from the 25 to the 48, so that when they punt, Buffalo's drive starts at their own 15-yard line. And in this kind of weather, now granted, Buffalo's used to this kind of weather, but they don't have the running game, to be effective in this kind of weather. They're going to have to throw the ball and count on Allen, scrambling and running around, to be the difference in this game. But the weather doesn't dictate that they're going to throw the ball effectively. And even Diggs hasn't had a really good season, although Davis has. And so I don't see Buffalo. I don't see how they're warranted to be such a big favorite in this game Well, I think they're going to struggle to get to 20 points. I think Pittsburgh, if nothing else, has solidified their defense. They played a lot of these games in recent weeks. Heck, they played a very similar game to this at Cleveland earlier this year, and I'm trying to remember the final score of that game. It was like 16-13 or 13-10 or something really low-scoring game. I think this is going to be very similar to that, and maybe because the weather is a lot worse than that Pittsburgh-Cleveland game. It could be, 9-3 or 10-9 or. That's not to say that I want any part of an under 33 or whatever you said the total was, but that total is certainly warranted in this game. I want no part of any kind of. I think if I had to pick one thing, you'd have to look at Allen over his rushing total. I just think that kind of like Hurts with bad weather. You're not going to throw the ball up for grabs. If you don't trust, your receivers against a pretty good defense, you're going to hold on to it. You're going to run, try to get the first down yourself. I'm not going to be surprised if he carries the ball in this game, 10, 12 times. If that's the case, he'll get to 50 yards.
40 and a half is his baseline.
Yeah. And but that's a little high, but if I had to take one thing in this game, that's what I would take. I would take Allen over the 40 and a half rushing yards. I want nothing else.
I'll go ahead. I'll put him on the list of consideration. You can carpet bomb the lower end of the scoreboard with 3-0s, 9-3s, 6-0s, 10-0s. If you throw $1 down on like 6 or 7 of those, the least you can win in that scenario is like $250.
Hell,
so maybe worth a shot. There we go. If this is actually indoors, like in Indianapolis or something like that, chance for a funner game, more points by the Bills. I think they could win this game like 34-13. But in these kind of conditions, I'm just going to assume this is the old school, old fashioned. Let's just run the ball a lot type of dealio. And when that happens in the NFL, that clock melts fast.
Right. And, they're not playing a team, from California or from Florida. They're playing a team that plays as many bad weather games as Buffalo plays,
right.
And when you play your whole season.
They're relatively, they seem like they're far, but they're actually only a couple of hours away.
Yeah, and
West Coasters don't know that. But yeah.
What's the difference? You said moving this game to Cleveland. Yeah, great. What's that gain you? 10 degrees?
Right, yeah.
And Cincinnati, what's the weather like there? 15 degrees? It's, when these teams, take their winter vacation, they go to Baltimore, where it's raining. So, plus Pittsburgh, as much as any team in the league, they are not going to be phased. They know exactly what, how many layers of clothes to wear, what gloves are best in this kind of weather. They've been there, done that. So this isn't Kansas, the feared, Kansas City's going to have to go through Buffalo to get to the Super Bowl this year. Nobody's saying, Pittsburgh, they got to go to Buffalo. Pittsburgh, like, we've seen this, we're not even packing our umbrellas, we're used to this. So I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. And that being the case, like you said, and I agree with you, that this game were indoors or weather weren't a factor, I think if Buffalo could get ahead in this game, and then Pittsburgh would have a hard time catching up. But I just don't see that happening here. Buffalo might get ahead 3-0, 6-0, or something, but that's not going to phase Pittsburgh. You keep grinding out games like this, you end up winning them 10-9.
Both of these teams quite capable of turning it over in the red zone as well, or as they approach the goal line. You can see that playing out as well as a scenario. All right, let's get to the fun games. Packers and Cowboys, 50.5 the total here. Dallas -7. So besides Cadillacs breaking down in the neighborhood, I imagine the Green Bay Packers like this. When I look at the line graph of a stock exchange, it goes up a decent amount, drops down a little bit, goes up, drops down a little bit, goes up, drops down a little bit. So I think this is a team still getting better with Green Bay, and they have a lot of people to throw the ball to. They even get another tight end back, Musgrave, which I'm wondering if they're going to throw the old, these coaches are going to pull some tricks out of their sleeves. So I'm wondering if we might see some 2 tight end sets at times too, now that Kraft's come along, and he's been somewhat reliable for Green Bay as well. So maybe you get some Musgrave, Tucker Kraft action involved with the abundant amount of receivers that Green Bay has. I mean, they have Reed, they have Watson, they have Dobbs, they have, we're not even talking about Dontavian Wicks, the University of Virginia product from right here, who scored twice last week and at 43-1 the one odds to score twice in this game. Maybe even just put $2 on that. But Green Bay, they have a lot of offense they can throw at you. Jordan Love, besides shoveling people out of the snow in Green Bay, endearing himself to the fans even more, doing that here. Viral videos of yesterday. This team just seems to be really trending in the right direction, which is a terrible recipe for a Mike McCarthy coached Dallas Cowboys team, at least to me. Now, the Cowboys score a lot of points at home. I do think that they're going to have a good playoff performance themselves. So that's why I think this game screams over to me. I just don't know how. Honestly, these teams could be in the upper 30s by halftime and make that 50.5 look like a joke, to be honest, if things do go right and we do have an all-out aerial assault, which could be the case. Now, Green Bay is going to get Aaron Jones involved in the ground as well, but they have so many guys they can throw the ball to. I just don't know how you don't hold down the scoreboard. So for me, it's a green light for anything you want to try to do, especially exotic, trying to add up some different players to get some high numbers on some maybe alt receiving lines, 2 touchdowns or whatever. There's a lot of experimenting that can happen here. To me, the sure bet on the side is the over. I don't know how CeeDee Lamb doesn't score a touchdown either. So if there has to be a sure bet in the game, I guess I'm going to give it to CeeDee Lamb, since he's going to be the one Cowboy who's going to score, where the Packers just have a million different guys who can score. But CeeDee Lamb is minus 150, but that's fine if you're going to hook it up with a bunch of other guys for sure. But I see a lot of points, Dave. What do you got?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I mean, Green Bay comes into this game probably as healthy as they've been all year. They have maybe, when they're healthy, maybe too many weapons. I mean, you have no idea.
Yeah, they have a good future ahead of them. They're going to be.
They've got running backs, they got wideouts, they got tight ends. The question is that in this game is going to be the quarterback. First playoff game on the road. Dallas, a really good home team. He's going to have to come up big in this game, because, as you noted, Dallas is going to put points on the board in this game. There's no doubt about that. And Cincinnati, Green Bay, I was looking for, comps from earlier in the season, and I would say the closest thing they have to this kind of opponent is, their 2 games against Detroit. Both of those games were high scoring. Both of those games would have gone over this total, even though one of them was outdoors at Green Bay. I don't remember what the weather was like there, but the quarterback has passed those kinds of tests before. I just think that in the end, Dallas's experience, the home field, is going to be the difference. I think Dallas is going to win this game. But just because Dallas gets ahead in this game doesn't mean that Green Bay is going to stop scoring, because they're a team that's, they get behind by 10 points, by 14 points. They're still going to throw the ball. They're still to all of their outside weapons, even, as you noted, swing the ball out to Jones. He's good for 15 yards on, swing passes. I think that this is, as you said, And the problem in this game is just trying to figure out who's going to get the touchdowns, because both teams have a lot of options. I think it's easier to guess for Dallas than it is for Green Bay.
I think Jaden Reed's been the most consistent one for Green Bay. I'd give it to Reed overall.
Yeah, but you know,
now you have Watson back without Watson. Right?
Well, exactly. That's when Watson's been out, when Musgrave's been out, you know, when Dillon's been out. I mean, you know, they just Green Bay could score 4 touchdowns in this game with 4 different guys. It would be no surprise. Dallas might do that as well. I mean, they certainly have that option. I think there's one guy in this game. Well, actually, I think there are 2 guys in this game who are most likely to score 2 touchdowns, and one obviously would be Lamb.
Right.
But to me, the guy that I think's got to be the best value touchdown scorer in this game, even to get 2, has got to be Ferguson. I mean, he's been a touchdown
15-1
for 2.
Yep.
Yeah, we're up for 1.
Let's see here. Jake Ferguson for 1 touchdown is plus 185.
I mean, I like it. I take both of those. I think he's, I think Lamb is more likely to score a touchdown, but not as much as those odds would indicate. Again, everybody in the world knows who Lamb is. Nobody, who hasn't followed football closely or is in a fantasy league knows who Ferguson is. And that explains the difference between, would you say, minus 150 and plus 185.
Right.
When there's not that big a difference, I think you get a really nice value on Ferguson here. And again, on Dallas, where I think Dallas scores a minimum of 3 touchdowns, maybe more likely 4 in this game. They score 4 touchdowns. Ferguson's going to get 1, maybe 2 of them. And like I said, when you look at Green Bay, they score 3 touchdowns. God knows. I can give you 6 options there of who's going to get 1. It's hard to predict. I think Dallas is easier to predict. I think Dallas is going to win, so that maybe that means they have 1 or 2 more touchdowns in this game. So you got better choices there. Give me Ferguson for a touchdown on my non-greedy ticket. Give me Ferguson for 2 touchdowns on the inevitable greedy ticket.
All right, so far on the non-greedy, out of the 5 games, I have Stroud over 11.5 yards rushing, Waddle over 48.5 yards receiving, Hurts over 34.5 yards rushing, Josh Allen over 40.5 yards rushing, and Jake Ferguson plus 185 for a touchdown. All right.
I like it.
All right, I'll do the payout. I'll ask you your last question after the last game, and I'll calculate the payout and get back to you. So let's see here. Anything else for me on this one? I don't think so. Bet the over and have fun. Nice matinee game here on Sunday evening. Okay, and I think we can follow it up with another fun one. Now, the one thing that does worry me about the over in this game, 51.5, is the fact that Detroit does like to run the ball. They may try to win this game with the trenches, offensive line. Let's let these guys put a helmet on a helmet here and try to move the ball. Oh, yeah, by the way, if we keep Matthew Stafford off the field here in Detroit, that's probably a good thing at the end of the day, because he could be the Grim Reaper at the end of the day for sure that comes haunting the Lions. So I think the Lions try to win this game on the ground primarily. Now, Cable's going to be arrogant enough to let Goff take his shots as well. There's going to be plenty of those because at the end of the day, that's how Dan Campbell is. He was kind of married to Jared Goff as he was jettisoned out of Los Angeles for Matt Stafford. So it's almost like you're kind of taking the crumbs from the elegant meal that is Matthew Stafford in a weird way. So they're going to try to make this thing work. But Stafford and McVay have a good thing going for sure. I think the Lions defense is going to have issues with these receivers for the Rams. So I think when Stafford does get in here, he's going to have his opportunity. So I'm wondering how long the Lions are going to be able to stick with this with any kind of run game, especially if the Rams can get out of the gates early on them, like 14-0. That's the worst thing that could happen for Detroit because they might be in for a long night if that's the case. So either way you dice it, I think we're going to get a chance for the Lions to try to control this clock a little bit more, where I do like a lot of points. I could kind of seen it do the old, we're not going to quite get there to 51.5. This game's going to end up 24-21, and it's 45-point score total. Oh, you guys are all losers at home who bet the over sitting here watching Sunday Night Football. So I could see a scenario like that play out. But I think at the end of the day, I think there's just too much firepower on both sides of the ball, both sides of the offenses here to be able to put up more than the 51.5 points. I think Puka has a very favorable matchup here for the Rams against that Lions secondary. He's an emerging star, so I can see Stafford having a good game with him. And he was bottled up at the beginning of the year, but ever since he's become unbottled for Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs has been fantastic. You can argue that he's their best player, really overall. He is what Bijan Robinson probably could have been in Atlanta if that coach maybe would have played his cards right, or Atlanta just had a little bit better talent all around to go with him. But I like Gibbs in this game. I like Puka Nacua in this game, and I'm going to go for a lot of the points. And I think against public sentiment, who are all on top of the Rams here, I think the Lions can maybe pull this out and win a close game at the end of the day. I'm not going to be as shocked if they're the Cadillac that clunks out in the neighborhood, though, either, and the Rams come out on top. But I think a good game Sunday night, and you give me your thoughts about everything I just said and more, Dave Del Grande.
Well, I like a lot of what you said there. I think that what I don't agree with you is both of these teams are very good against the run. I can't imagine either team is going to spend a whole lot of time trying to establish a running game in what should be a high-scoring game. Now, that said, both teams have a really good running game. So, how much are they going to try, to get Williams going against Detroit's run defense, which is really good? To get Montgomery going against the Rams' run defense, which is really good. I think Detroit is stuck, maybe having to do it more than the Rams because that's just the way Detroit is. They're more of a running team. And Laporta's injury is a big injury.
Big question mark.
Supposedly he might try to play. I don't know. I find that a little hard to
he
believe.
was practicing all wrap. He was seen practicing with his knee braced up, but he was going through drills.
Yeah, and so that, to me, he's the equivalent, an extension of their running game, the play action, the throw the ball short to him, and because they're focusing on taking the short pass away from St. Brown. But without Laporta in there, St. Brown gets more focus. It makes it more difficult for Goff. And I certainly don't think it helps Detroit's running game. I do agree with you 100% that the difference maker in this game for Detroit is going to have to be Gibbs, because he, in essence, is going to become their tight end. He's going to be the guy who gets the ball, the short passes.
His receiving yards are what I would like more than a rushing, I think.
Yeah. I think he could have a real nice, all-purpose, rushing and receiving total. But I do think he's going to be used much more in the passing game than he has, just because like I said, instead of throwing the ball short to Laporta 8 times, they're going to take half of those at least and throw it out to Gibbs on the side. While the defense is focused on stopping St. Brown, because Detroit's other receivers, just even our buddy Williams, they're not that good. And so that's why the tight end has been so important to them, and why in this game I think Gibbs is their most important player. He has to have a big game. I think he will have a big game here. I think the Rams are a little overrated. But the Rams offense, as you indicated, you think of them, you think of Cooper Kupp. He's healthy. He's been playing very well lately. That helps Nacua. who's had an incredible season. And then we're not even talking about, the biggest surprise in their offense, DeMarcus Robinson.
Right.
They've been throwing the ball 8 to 10 times to DeMarcus Robinson every game. I think he's a real sleeper in this game because, like I said, I just don't see the Rams, running the ball effectively, and thus, why run the ball at all when you've got these 3 great targets, to throw the ball to? Detroit obviously is going to still have to honor your running game. I think Robinson could be a real surprise here, as over what I presume is a fairly low passing total. Maybe even to get a touchdown. He scored a lot of touchdowns.
Plus
this year.
350 for a touchdown and 42.5 for his receiving yards. I would take a shot on a touchdown at plus 350, to be honest.
42.5.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been throwing the ball. I mean, look at his recent stats. I mean, to throw out last week of a game that didn't count, but he's been getting 8, 9, 10 targets some of these games. And you throw the ball 8 times to him this game, you're going to double that yardage total. And it helps him that they have these. He is in essence what Laporta is, to Detroit. He's the guy who, they're focusing on stopping Kupp, this is what Detroit lacks, is that kind of that receiver that can get in, get 10, 15, 20 yards down the field and make a nice catch and turn it into a nice 25-yard gain. I think that, like I said, to me, what's critical about this game is that I just don't see these teams running the ball a whole lot. I just don't think that's going to be successful for them. And if it turns into an all-passing game, then you've got to give the Rams the advantage, especially if Laporta's not in there. Gibbs has to have a big game. What I fear in terms of the total, a very high total, which I think this game is going to go over that total, but what I fear is because neither team is able to run the ball when they get into the red zone, you're going to see a lot of field goals. I think you can see a very, very high scoring game among kickers here, offenses that, just can't, they're all throw the ball 5 or 10 yards at a time, but you get down to the 10-yard line and now those passes you can't throw anymore. So you stall, you can't run it, you kick field goals. So, this is a game where I'm going to put the over-under on field goals in this game at 4.5 total, and I would jump on the over of that. So that's my greatest fear for, will this game be 34-31? It could be, but I think more likely you're looking at 26-23. The one team that kicks the 4 field goals beats the one team that kicks the 3 field goals. And I like Robinson. Those numbers you quoted for him. You didn't quote me any numbers for Gibbs, but I think I'm going to like those as well.
Let's see here for this game. So I'm getting your ticket ready. Receiving numbers for DeMarcus Robinson, we said were 42.5. Receiving yards for Gibbs, just 19.5.
Now if you look at Gibbs' season, he was catching a lot of passes in the middle of the season, and as Laporta got better, they threw the ball less to Gibbs. Mm-hmm. But if Laporta doesn't play or is in there, is hampered. He's in there, but he's only in there as a mirage. They're going to have to throw the ball to somebody else. They have another kind of a pass-catching tight end, Mitchell, but he's also injured. So they're going to end up playing, if they play a tight end, Brock Wright, who's a blocker. And so they're not going to throw the ball to him a whole lot. They're probably going to throw the ball to their offensive tackles more than they throw the ball to their tight ends. But I think this puts, Gibbs' his receiving total is consistent with the amount of yardage he's been getting receiving wise the last month. but I say throw that out the window with Laporta's status as it is. I think Gibbs, he could have 2 to 3 times that total. I mean, that ranks as good as anything I've seen on the board today.
Let's see if we get an alternate number for him real quick. See where we can draw the line. Nope, just catches. They won't give me yards yet. Oh well. Let's see. 5 catches for Gibbs is at plus 194.
Yeah, I mean that's right around what I would expect. I mean, he's not going to catch 8 balls,
right?
No. He's going to catch 4. To get to 19 yards, he just needs to catch 2. The line's telling you we think he's going to catch 5. Well, if he catches 5, he's going, for 50 yards or more.
Right.
So that is kind of, they're kind of tipping you off to, hey, don't tell anybody. But we think that yardage total is way too low. So, okay, they don't have to tell anybody. I'm telling you that yardage total is way too low.
All right, so what's your non-greedy play in this game?
All right, that's got to be it. I mean, it's got to be him over 19.5.
All right, Jahmyr Gibbs over 19.5.
Even though, like I said, I do like Robinson in both of his things, but we'll save that for a greedier ticket.
Okay, so if you take all this, Jalen Hurts over 34.5 rushing yards. Josh Allen over 40.5 rushing yards. Jake Ferguson, tight end for the Cowboys, anytime touchdown. Jalen Waddle over 48.5 yards. Receiving. CJ Stroud over 11.5 yards rushing. And then we'll go ahead and throw Jahmyr Gibbs over 19.5 yards receiving. You're now getting paid 73 to 1 odds on that.
Okay.
6 plays. All right. So $10 wins you just about, let's see,
I'm going to get 730.
Yeah, $730. There you go. The Josh Allen prop fell right off the board. When I said that, they locked it out, so I couldn't do an exact calculation. But yes, in that neighborhood of $730. Okay, of all these teams this week, if you had to hitch your ties to any one of them, which one has the best chance to win the Super Bowl of all the teams that who are playing this week?
I'd say Dallas. It's hard to pick in the AFC. Baltimore goes in as a clear favorite, but Kansas City and Buffalo have been the teams in recent years. Cincinnati, I guess you might throw in there, as the teams to beat in recent years. So Baltimore, while they've won a Super Bowl and then while they've been a pretty consistent winning team over the years, they're not a heavyweight in the AFC, and yet they've reached heavyweight status this year because Kansas City's fallen down, because Buffalo has fallen down, although they've gotten back up, because some of these other teams that Cincinnati's not there anymore. Jacksonville's not there anymore. The Chargers aren't there anymore. And so it seems that Baltimore's path is easier than certainly what's in the NFC, but they're not playing this week, so we're not considering them. And the teams we're left to consider, Kansas City, I'm not even sure they're going to win this week. Buffalo, they've played better of late, but this really hasn't been their season. And so I don't like any of those teams, whereas in the NFC, you take Philadelphia out of the picture, which they might be if they lose this week. What's left? Dallas is going to have to beat the 49ers. I think you would easily identify that that's going to be the big, the NFC Championship game. And I give Dallas a 50-50 chance to win that game. Especially if they gain a little momentum here in the playoffs. So I think that to me it's a no-brainer among all the teams playing this week that Dallas stands out far and away as the one that has the best chance to win the Super Bowl.
Plus 750 are their odds, which is probably about as good as it could have been all year, really, to buy at this point. They're probably about the same thing or worse for a decent part of the season, I would think.
Yeah, I mean that's a nice price. And what that tells you is that they're not expecting Dallas to be able to go on the road and to win at San Francisco, which obviously is going to be difficult. But they've been there. They've heard a lot about how they've struggled on the road this year. They kind of conquered that demon a little bit. But I think what's most important for them is they get an opportunity to get their offense. It's going to come down to Dak Prescott's going to have to play well at San Francisco. And in order for him to get in that kind of mindset, it's nice that you draw Green Bay at home in what should be a really high-scoring game, and then you come back next week, and if I'm not mistaken, they're going to play the Rams-Lions winner. And again, you got that game at home, another very high-scoring game. I think Prescott can gain a lot of momentum going into that 49er game. And then Dallas has a shot.
Okay, let's see. You're playing in the poker tournament. The winner of the tournament gets their first pick of choice for the Super Bowl. You come in like 6. Let's just assume the Niners, Ravens, Bills, Cowboys, Chiefs are all off the board at that point. You have the pick of the litter of the scraps. Who are you going to take? I guess it's Miami or Detroit. It would have to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, oh man. I think the AFC is so wide open that the team could come out of the AFC.
Would it shock you at the end of the day if Cleveland got to the Super Bowl? It really wouldn't me. To be honest, but
I've been, you've heard me. I've been on Cleveland all season long, but this matchup here could easily have been, you go to Kansas City rather than you go to Houston. They catch a huge break here in the first game, and then I don't know the matchups moving ahead, but I'm guessing they're going to play Baltimore if they win. They know Baltimore. They got a shot to beat Baltimore. In the cold weather and the rain or whatever, they're not going to be. It's kind of like Pittsburgh going to Buffalo. I don't think Cleveland's going to mind if it's raining next Sunday when they play Baltimore. They've played Lamar Jackson enough to know what you got to do against him. Heck, they've beaten Baltimore either once or twice this year. They're in the AFC, which is wide open. First off, you got to win this week, in order to be considered in this thing. I got to believe that. I'm kind of thinking of a fantasy draft where you've got the 6th pick and you really like, I don't know, CD Lamb, right? But you don't want to use the 6th pick of the draft. That's too high. But if you wait till the round 2, you don't get him. So do you overvalue him, or do you just go with the more of the sure thing? And that's what I fear here with picking Cleveland number 6. They should be the 12th team picked. And I'm going to take him with the number 6 pick. It's almost like I'm wasting my position. What I would do, I'd offer up, my number 6 pick for the guy who has number 12 and half the entry fee. Pocket half the money, get half my money back, still pick the same team that I was going to take and take Cleveland at number 12.
All right.
How's that?
Right.
Strategy.
I like it. All right. If anyone out there wants to do the old blue collar town parlay, Cleveland to play the Lions in the Super Bowl, $10 will win you $1,400. There you go. All right, Dave. I appreciate it, man. We'll see what happens this week, and we will break down the 4 games next week. We'll get into a little bit more NBA as well. All right. So have fun with the games, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, there's some fun games out there.
All right. Congrats on your fantasy once again, too. Good job.
All right, thanks.
Good job. All right. Dave Del Grande from Castro Valley, California, joining us. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. We appreciate you tuning in for this last 3.5 hours here to the Round Robin here on the Deep End Broadcasting Network. You can get the replay. Go back to deepend757.com for all of that. Click on archives, and you can catch the show from the beginning from there. If you go ahead and replay it now, they'll take you right back up until kickoff, just about, with the first game, Texans and Browns there. So Dave Del Grande liked the under in that game. I'm going to disagree with him on that. I'm going to take the over, and I feel like we're on the same page for pretty much all of the rest of the games. My best bets, again, one more time, if we take a look at it, if you're joining in late. We'll take the over in the Cleveland-Houston game. We will take the under in the Kansas City-Miami game, and I think Miami can win for sure. We'll take over Cowboys-Packers tomorrow. We'll take under in the Steelers and the Bills, which is off the board for some reason right now. I'll lean on Detroit to win narrowly at home and what could be a fun game, but beware of the over. I just feel like you're going to be stuck somewhere on 47 points, not able to get over that 51.5, pulling your hair out, trying to get the over at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Sunday night after a long day of football. So don't put yourself through that excruciating pain if you can't. And maybe a higher scoring game on Monday night. 43 now is the line, down from 43.5 for the Eagles and the Buccaneers. So Dave Del Grande loves upset there with the Buccaneers, as does Nephew Dave. Wow, we're all kind of thinking the same thing this week. Should be fun, guys. All right, so hopefully you got a lot of good knowledge. Don't be afraid to move a few lines together, put a couple 2-touchdown scores together. It's the playoffs. Go ahead and have fun with it. Be responsible. Don't drink and drive. Don't do anything stupid here. You're doing good in January, so let's keep up the positive momentum, and we will get back together next week. The Friday soccer paycheck will return at some point. The APL is on some kind of crazy schedule. Just 4 games this weekend coming off the international break, so we took a break from the paycheck on that. Some English championship games I'm probably glad we didn't go over as well, played out this morning while we were on the air. We'll bring back What the Puck is going on Saturday mornings. Once we're done with Saturday round robins, we'll have to do the Saturday again next week with this show, and then back to Sunday for NFL Championship Sunday for that. Super Bowl party to be announced for the show, brunch party. We're going to have everyone out for that. So more information on that next week. All right, good luck on your tickets, everyone.